Welcome, everybody. We are back. We are in the crypt once again for another amazing interview. So excited to be here, guys. This is a topic that we're going to be covering tonight that I have actually touched on in a couple of my other interviews with Dan Willis. We talked about alien. We've talked about aliens. We talked about UFOs. We talked about the UFO agenda, the last 100 years. Dan really broke it down, so that was a really interesting interview that I did with Dan, and I wanted to get other people on here to talk about this, experiencers, people that are, dealing with this topic in person. I find it fascinating. It's happened to somebody in my life, which I will talk about, I'm sure, during this interview. What got me started looking into this, and it's a topic I have been looking at my whole life. Definitely a topic. UFO and aliens and people that are experiencing a lot of different things. A lot of different phenomena is going on, and I'm really interested in all of that. And so I'm really excited to bring my guest on. I don't want to talk too much and just babble here at the beginning, so let me go ahead here and bring my guest on. Here we go. We have Zoi Graestonne. Welcome, Zoi, to the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hello, I'm super excited to be here. This is awesome.
Oh, it's going to be a great one. I mean, I heard you on Bill Grant's show on Revolution Radio just a couple days ago, and I was like, I have to get you on the show to talk about it. You've had so much go on in your life with this topic, and I was
Oh,
fascinated.
absolutely.
Yeah, I was
It's
fascinated.
awesome.
And so, why don't we start? Let's just go to the beginning. When did things start happening? I guess that's a good place to start.
That's a good question. So things really started happening when I was a kid. I remember bits and pieces of them, and sometimes the more things happen, the more like memories will come back. I sometimes just feel like weird flashbacks, like in the middle of doing nothing. I'll just all of a sudden remember stuff and be like, "Hey, remember that time when?" And some people remember being there. Sometimes my dad will remember stuff and be like, "Yeah," and then this crazy weird thing happened, and then we just kind of like move on. My dad doesn't like talking about it because it makes him uncomfortable, but I'm not sure if it's because he doesn't want to think about it or if it's because um, it's just like too much for him
Right.
to like work through sometimes. But the first time I realized things were happening was in like 2014,
Hmm.
which is kind of where some of my stories started, where I was dating this guy in Vegas, my Russian ex that we make jokes about being a time traveler. Yeah.
We'll have
Um,
to get into that.
yeah. That's where things like happened to me in a way that was like really intense and like really recognizable. Whereas before I was like, oh yeah, spooky stuff just happens, no biggie. But then this was something where I was like, no, this is affecting my sanity in my regular life. Like this is like super uncomfortable. Like what is happening?
Right.
And that was about the time I met Solaris. Well, I say met Solaris because we connected, but I only just met her in person recently. So,
Oh,
but the
cool.
first time I connected with her was back around the time when all this first started. So I'm very grateful that she is someone I got to connect with and stay connected with, because she's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I love her to death, and
Yeah, she
it's been
does a.
really cool to talk to her about all this stuff.
Yeah, she's very knowledgeable. That's for sure. Does a great show. So yeah, I
Oh
get it.
yes.
So if you, so you were somebody. This started young for you. Like this wasn't like
Yeah.
you're. That's crazy. So what? Like I mean, I guess we could go into. Were you when this started happening? What was going on in your mind? Like, were you questioning like your sanity? Were you like I just, or did you know? Like I mean, I'm always curious. Like the first ones have to be the most impactful, I would think, because it's something that you're realizing is happening and you don't know what's really going on. So how was that? Like, have you always been sensitive that way? Like, I just really fascinated how this affected you at the beginning.
It's affected me since I was a kid for sure. I have like weird memories of just knowing weird stuff was happening, but but like I said, it wasn't until it was, I was in my early 20s where things were happening and I was like, there is no other explanation for this absolutely whackers bonkers thing happening.
Right.
And people would be like, but how do you know if that's never happened before? And I'm like, I don't know. I just
You just know.
it's like a part of you is like recognizing all that information. Like it's happening and then you're conscious, and those are like two different existences in my brain where it's like things are happening and I'm telling myself stuff, and then consciously in my physical reality I'm like, something happened, I should pay attention to whatever that was. And oftentimes I don't. It just, so much information comes and goes through my head and my spirit and like I guess my third eye or something. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to explain it. It like kind of comes in through a filter through almost what feels like the back of my head, but like in a disconnected sort of like I don't know. My existence feels like stairs sometimes where like I can recognize things like in my physical reality, you know, like this is happening like physically, like actually. But then there's like a piece of me like back here somewhere that sort of recognizes all this information and sort of feeds it in almost like a manager,
Right,
like a
right.
like spiritual management. So it's the more I get connected with my higher self, the more I recognize when stuff is happening and the more I can properly listen to my intuition, which I have a habit of just not doing for some reason.
I think a
Like,
lot of people are like that. I think a lot of
yeah,
people don't really listen to that inner self. I think that's so important that people ignore that. And I'm like, there's a reason that this
absolutely.
is happening. Like, connect with it. I mean, and it's hard
Yeah,
with society the way it is. I get it. Life is moving so fast now, and people are just so lost. I say that I get why
absolutely.
they can't, but it's so important that you do, as
Well,
you
and
said.
a lot of it is like a psychological thing, like a psychologically like healing process has to happen. Like for me, if I'm someone who realized like because of some of the stuff that happened when I was a kid, with like my brother's dad and like some of the people that were in and out of our lives, um, like trauma in your regular day-to-day life does not help you when crazy trauma happens in a way you can't explain. And
Exactly.
so if you already have like a crazy damaged like stressful life, like if your life is just straight chaos all the time and you're struggling with like regular day-to-day things, the supernatural comes in, starts like hitting you, and you literally just feel like you're spiraling. You know, if you're in a bad relationship, things are just gonna make you more stressed, and the more unhealed you are, the lower your frequency and vibration in the world is. And since we're all made of energy, like we're all vibrating all the time, right? It's a scientific fact, like you're constantly vibrating, and you can change the level in which you vibrate at by certain breathing techniques, by thinking differently, by working on, you know, adjusting stuff that goes on in your head. And so a lot of it too, when I'm in a really low place, this is why people like to say, you know, they like to invalidate you. Like, well, if you're in a bad place mentally, whatever, like, of course, weird stuff's going to happen because
Hmm.
it's all in your head. And it's like, no, but there are some things that will happen the lower frequency you are, because that's where other entities reside. That's where, you know, spiritual parasites and stuff are. They're a lower entity. That's why people it's weird to use this because I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't grow up religious, but I have like a lot of weird churchy like side experiences.
Hmm.
But a lot of people who go to church who say like as long as you know that you're in power, those things can't touch you.
Yep.
You know, they're always saying, you know, as long as you know, for them it's as long as you connect with God and you know that Jesus is watching you and gives you power, like that's how you can stand tall and you can fight off the devil. And it's like they're not wrong, uh, but it's you stepping into your own higher power and being that we're physical beings, we're 3D beings, and some of that stuff is like lower
Hmm.
dimensional. Like you can actually just shift into a different level to like make that stuff kind of cease. It doesn't scare you as much.
Right.
um and then like I was saying on, I think, I don't remember if it was Bill or Solaris's show, but I was like, I don't know if you ever see God and like get presented with seeing into forever, nothing really scares you anymore
I would
because like
imagine.
it doesn't matter, you've seen everything and you've been overwhelmed. And I've had my
So
brain
true.
melted a few times and
I
it's
can
just kind of like,
imagine.
yeah, like
And but
regular stuff,
it's
I'm
really
like, it's
important what
fine.
it's important what you said though, because I love because in a lot of my interviews I talk about this working on yourself, and it's really cool that you're kind of talking about that now because it wasn't what I was planning on. This is not where I was planning on going, but it's so important, and it's just showing that this is something that is so true across the board that you have to do this work on yourself, which is so important to connect with yourself. And I totally agree with you when you're in that lower vibration. That's why I always say that the people controlling the world, which I call satanic, they're mind controllers. They
Mhm.
really are. And when you dive into it, you're dealing with a satanic, whether you believe in it or not. I always tell people it doesn't matter. They believe in it, what they're doing. They're
Right.
very organized, they're smart, and they are on the same page. So they keep us in this fear state. It's always fear. That's why I never watch news. I never did. And I stay away from a lot of things because they keep you. And same with what's happened over the last 3 years. I can't really say. You guys know what I'm talking about, which stopped the world basically because YouTube will flag it. But anyways,
That
the
whole beer controversy,
yeah,
right?
yeah, and exactly, and so that it's so important what you're saying is when you're in that lower fear state and lower vibration, that is when they get in. It's just
Yeah.
you can't put it any other way.
And honestly, when I found a few friends who were doing like real, like physical and spiritual healing, um, like that wasn't religious related or anything, it
Mm-hmm.
was like a specifically like, no, I woke up one day and realized something was wrong and I needed to make some changes. And one of my friends, she had a family member with cancer, and they went like this experience that she shared with me changed my life for more than one way. But she said that she had taken her family member, I think it's her mom, to like chemo or radiation or whatever the treatment was, and they had learned that sugar actually feeds cancer, like processed
Right.
sugars just
Yep.
feed tumors and stuff, and tumors are just like they're just living things that exist within your body's like biosystem, right? So you're literally just feeding it and allowing it entry, and sort of like you're consenting to its invasion
Right.
in a way by constantly feeding it, while also trying to go through all these treatments and stuff. If you continue to live the exact same way you did when you got sick, nothing's going to get better. It's not going to heal, she was saying. And then she walked up to this lady who she said just had the weirdest look on her face, but she saw a bunch of candy on the counter, like Jolly Ranchers
Mm-hmm.
and like lollipops and stuff. And she was like, isn't this like sort of perpetuating the illness? And the lady said something to the degree of like, well, we're here for repeat customers, or we like repeat
Wow.
customers or something. And that was, my friend was like, I'm looking into healthcare. And she's like, because we have a sick care system. She's like, we
Absolutely.
don't treat mental health. We just feed you full of drugs that kind of cancel out things. You just stop talking, stop thinking. You don't do stuff for yourself, so you're easily controlled. And as soon as she said that, all my like ET stuff and all the like really negative, like borderline demonic stuff that was happening, I was like, that's how I just don't feed it sugar. Just don't let it know you're scared, for one. And two, most of them, like if you start swinging physically, if you're just like getting scrappy, like
Mm-hmm.
they're gonna leave, because if they're on our physical plane, they're super weak, because
Right.
that's not their regular form. So kind of like when you're in the astral, if you're astrally projecting and you're not like taking care of yourself in a deep way, if you're not like consciously aware of where you're going and walking, you're not like spiritually grounded, like you can just get super messed up.
Right.
They have movies and stuff that like kind of talk about it, but no one takes it seriously. And it's like when I watch movies like that and I see things like that where people are like astral projecting and then they get like absolutely wrecked by some entity, and I'm like, you
That's
didn't
why.
you didn't take care of yourself, or people who lucid dream but don't understand that like there are rules to lucid dreaming, which I'm one of those people that didn't know and started just
Going at
I
it.
I don't read directions or instructions. I just dive into stuff.
Me too.
I can't decide if that's like an admirable quality or like a red flag.
I
Like,
think it's both. I think at least we have the courage to try and dive in,
yeah,
right? We're not in fear. That's what I look
I'm
at. But I mean, it does help to kind of read the instructions, I would say.
yeah. Usually, I'm just like, oh, this is cool. I'm gonna just do it. It looks like it's self-explanatory, and then I just go, and people are like, when you summoned that thing in your backyard, did you consider salt circles, protection, grounding, prayers?
Nothing.
did you think more than 5 minutes ahead? And it was like, no, I read the book and it said you can summon things. And I said, all right, bet. And I went outside and I got lucky because oh, yeah. But
Wow, it's true
it's
though. I mean, this is fascinating to me. I'm really enjoying this because it's we're getting into some stuff I think is really important, and this work on ourselves, I think that is really key, and I think it's something that's missing in most people. I really truly believe
I
that. I
agree.
talk about it. People I think don't even know who they are anymore. They don't know their true self. They've lost connection with nature, with their inner nature. They're, people are just lost, and I know it's by design. I get that, but it's also it's our responsibility to get back online, I would say, and to get in
Absolutely.
contact with ourselves. So this is great. I mean, I'm sure we're gonna go all over here, but when this started happening to you, did you start like did you I know what I would do. I would be researching everything. If this started happening to me, I would be diving into anything I could get my hands on. Did that happen for you?
Yes, I get very obsessive about topics that are new and interesting, or I feel like can solve a problem. I do dive like right into those too. I
Hmm.
dive real deep. and it becomes like a 24-hour experience. Like I obsess over finding that information until I feel fulfilled to some
Mm-hmm.
degree, and it drives my parents bonkers. It drove my boyfriend crazy because like when that stuff started happening, I was talking to Misha and Solaris and in those groups and stuff, experiencer groups, MK Ultra groups, like people who struggle with different things, and it's not always aliens, but it's also not always like spiritual. It's not
Right.
always like a religious thing. Sometimes people have weird experiences with black magic, or they have just like things that happen in their dreams that are really weird. Some people have weird experiences realizing they have abilities and stuff. And so I was in multiple of those groups because I experienced kind of a little bit of everything. And it was really interesting to share stuff with people because they'd be like, well, have you looked into this, or have you tried this, or did you look into this thing over here? If not, go to these websites. And boy, would I'd be taking notes in all the classes and in the groups and stuff, and just trying to figure stuff out and see if their experiences were what I thought in how I was receiving the information, if it was relative to me, or if it's something I should just keep note of. Like the experience that happened with a mutual friend of mine and I's, that stimulated the realization something was happening with the radar attack that I was talking about on Bill's and Solaris' show. I don't know, something about them talking about that. I was like, I should make note. This is very specific information. That's the thing too. People will start saying things and I'll be like, that sounds really specific. That
Right.
sounds like a very particular, like you want me to remember this particular piece of information or fact or whatever,
Right.
this puzzle piece is important. And I make notes in my brain to remember stuff like that, so that certain details, if they start popping up, it's like I should be suspicious.
Well,
um,
what's this radar story? Can you tell it? You were saying if you
yeah.
or if you can't,
So
that's cool.
no, I can. It was kind of the one I was talking about last time with the donut like
Oh,
ray
the
that came
rings.
down.
The
It's sort of
rings.
like, yeah. Yeah,
Fascinating.
I've a few people have described it as like radar, or like when you're a kid and you're playing games and they have like the ray guns and stuff, when it has like the donut rings that come out and it's supposed to be like showing energy or whatever. Like I think Marvin the Martian uses it in like Looney Tunes. The way
Mm-hmm.
his gun shoots, everything comes out in these like discs. And so I never know what to call it because I hate calling it like the donut attack because people are like, girl,
Yeah,
what?
like I
It's
think
like
you
it was energy.
because
But
Bill kind of said on his show like the like Stargate, those rings coming down, and you said that's very
yeah,
similar. And I think most people, I would hope, seen Stargate, the movie. That's
I would
why.
hope so.
And yeah, and you see those rings come down when they grab somebody, and that's what you said. Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of like what you're, but it was energy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it was I can't even necessarily say that I saw it so much as I could feel it. And it came from the ceiling, and like I was describing before, it's like those kids toys that have like the pole, and then it's got like the different sized and colored
Oh, right,
donuts that
yeah.
go up so you can learn like, size and disposition, whatever. And it came like smaller and got bigger as it came down over me. And that's the first time as a, adult person talking about ET stuffs and like memories. That was the first time I recognized I was having abduction. It was like actively fighting it. Um, I was talking about trying to ground myself and stuff because I could feel myself being like separated on like a particle level. It felt like almost like I was being turned to like Laffy Taffy or something, and then like zooted through the roof and like
Wow.
aimlessly flying through space. Like it was the first time I remember reaching out to God and being like, hey man, in
I need
case
some
you're out
help.
there, now is a good time to step in and say hey. And the message I got was, this is gonna suck, but you'll be fine. And it was like, oh, okay. and,
That's
and then
so
the
crazy. I mean, I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, having that happen, and then, but I really resonate when you said grounding because I believe in grounding. I think people need to ground more
yeah,
too, because just how we're like, I don't think I walk around anywhere I can grounding, like in the summer especially. I'm barefoot everywhere. Like
yeah,
I really didn't even understand grounding till a few years ago, and I started doing it, and I just felt really good. Didn't even know the term grounding at that time.
yeah, same.
I was just doing it,
Yeah,
and somebody,
people.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say,
yeah, people.
yeah, go ahead. We're
Sorry.
bouncing back and forth, so you go
Ah.
ahead.
People used to say that to me all the time, like, you need to ground yourself, you need to be more grounded, or oh, it sounds like you were trying to ground yourself. And I was always like, yeah, I don't. like, and they're like, putting roots down. And I'm like, I just imagine trees like falling off the earth for some reason. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't, for some reason, the message didn't make sense to me. But in my brain, it reminded me of, if anybody's ever played EverQuest, there were certain spellcaster types like shamans and like rangers and stuff that would cast something called root to like root your enemy. And the description was to ground your enemy, and it was literally like you would cast a spell and these like big roots from the ground would come up and like sort of entrap you and like hold you in place.
Mm-hmm.
And so while it was used for an attack, it made sense in my brain that that's what people were assuming I was doing, was trying to summon like a level of spiritual roots to like stick into the ground every time I felt like I was like floating away. and
Absolutely.
and so yeah, and in those, some of those experiences, that's the best thing I can describe as I was trying to ground myself, because I was trying to recognize, like, what was the texture of the wall, what were the blankets, what did things smell like, was anyone near me, what time was it, like I try to process all of that as these things are happening, because in my brain, much like if there's some kind of like a car collision or something, I try to pay attention to everything, like what kind of cars were around, what were the people wearing, what do they look like, were there any conversations being had. Like, I guess normal people don't do that. I thought that was something everyone did. They just like process your
Right.
surroundings, but lo, I found that that is not true.
A lot of
Most
people, yeah,
people
they just go kind of
cannot
on
do that.
autopilot. Yeah, they go on
Yeah,
autopilot. They're not really taking anything in. And it's
yeah, and
amazing when you do. Like, it's really amazing when you do. I try to do that too. I try to be very aware of what's going on around me. And I'm even really aware of conversations. I always tell people,
hmm
after I have a conversation with somebody, I'll analyze it afterwards and I'll go through the whole
yes,
conversation.
yeah. I have like bullet points to go back to in my brain of
Yep.
like, was that important? Is that something I should remember for next time? Was this just like a passing conversation? Like, how will this carry on to my next conversation?
Yeah.
It's just like extra background about that person. Yeah, I keep a lot of personal notes on people, and I found out recently that some people think that's really weird. Um,
Really?
but
Jeez.
to me, I'm like, I that would be flattering to me if people were like making notes of like, hey, you said this cool thing one time and I wanted to elaborate on it,
That
or
is
like
cool.
you suggested something to me, so I researched it and I looked into it because of this, that, and the other conversation. Like, that would flatter me. It's only
Yeah.
happened a couple of times, and I'm always like, oh man, that's really cool. You really valued what I was talking about. But other
Uh,
people are like, why do you pay such close attention? And it's like,
and if you didn't pay attention, then they get mad that you didn't pay attention. So you
yeah,
can't win on this one.
exactly. It's like if you get in trouble, you're witness to something and you're like giving details and no one else has those details. And it's like, well, why do you have all the details? Like, you're either making it up or you're crazy and obsessive. And it's like, you can't have both.
You can't
You
have both.
like, I can either pay attention or I can just disconnect. I like, I made a reference like that to Chris Angel one time. He asked me my opinion on something, and I was like, do you want me to answer honestly, or do you want me to answer like as a fangirl, like
I
from a
say
fan's
that that's so
perspective?
crazy
And
that you just said that. I and people don't know that know me. You guys know that I'm not making this up. I say that to people all the time. They'll be like, "Give me the truth," and I'm like, "Do you want the truth, or do you want the friendly truth?" Like, there's a
right,
difference, and they always like, "Oh, I want the truth," and surprisingly, a lot of them don't want the truth.
they never do. I always give them. I give you two times so you can answer. Like, that's it. Like, do you want me to answer honestly, or do you want me to flatter your ego? No, no, I want honesty. It's like, okay, listen, I will probably not tell you anything you want to hear. It's what you need to hear. I'm the friend that you come to when you need to be smacked back into reality or like faced with
Yeah,
something. I am not the friend that will cover you. If something doesn't add up and you're doing something suspicious, I will absolutely call you out and be like, look, if I'm going to cover your ass, you got to tell me everything.
right.
Everything. And if I find out you lie or you didn't include something important and you make me look bad, sorry, man. Like, I don't,
No
no, I
doubt.
don't.
I think that's a great
I,
way to be, though. I wish more people were like that. I really do. I
yeah,
think we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in if
exactly.
people
I
were
think it'd
just
be
honest.
easier. It would just be easier. Life would just be less terrible,
I
honestly.
totally agree. I totally agree. Chris Angel though, like that's a name that's a name from the past. Wow, I remember watching his show years ago. What like how did you meet
A
him? Like I got
hundred
to ask this
years
story. I mean,
ago.
what do you think of
Okay.
him? How did you meet him? I want your thoughts.
So I used to be a loyal, which is what he used to call his fan
Yep.
base.
Yep.
And I was a hardcore loyal. But like from an artistic point of view, like there's a lot of stuff Chris did that I was like, wow, I want to do that someday. Like that's going to be me one of these days. And it's funny because the first couple times I saw this happens a lot with things that I get really passionate about. I'll see things about it a few times and be like, that's dumb. And then somebody will show up out of their mind excited about something and they'll bring up something that I've seen before but didn't recognize right away. And I'll get really into it because they're really into it. And I get really excited because it's like if you present something with just so much passion and excitement, I don't even care if I know what it is. I'll probably just get really excited with you.
Right.
I'm easily excitable. That's one of my like catchphrases. But so there was a few times I saw his stuff on TV and I was like, this guy is lame. Like, what a weirdo. And my stepsister and I, when my mom was married, a few years back, it we were downstairs watching TV and my stepdad came running downstairs and was like, oh my God, you got to see this guy. He made a woman. He cut her in half. She crawled away from herself. Like, he was freaking out. And he turned on the TV, and I don't remember what episode it was, but it was not actually the episode where he pulled a girl in half. It was something completely unrelated. I think it was the wine barrel escape was the first one I saw. And so it was all these clips of him doing magic tricks, and then it would go to commercial because they'd be like short videos and I'd be like, oh, this is stupid. And then dude comes running downstairs, oh my God, he made an elephant appear, like this is crazy, like in the middle of a parking lot. And I was like, okay, what is going, and I always loved magic. I thought magic was super cool. And it was, MySpace was still pretty fresh, but there was like other stuff online that I did as a teenager that had magicians, and I would creep on them and talk to them and hang out and just kind of, I never understood magic. And so I was always, people would do certain tricks and I was like, there's no way that they didn't literally just make that appear out of thin air. Like, for some reason, it just didn't make sense that it'd be a trick. And so I was obsessed with trying to learn this magic, thinking that people are literally just sitting around summoning sponge balls. And then, in fact, I went split into two different versions of magic and was like, these are not the same thing. They can cross sometimes, but they are not actually related.
Right.
And so that was kind of funny. But yeah, it was like the wine barrel escape episode. And then something happened. He did some stupid card trick. And I was like, this guy knows things. And I used to talk about the story of which episode sucked me in, but the wine barrel escape is the only one I can remember being like, forget this dude, like what a weirdo.
Right.
But there was an episode came on like right after that just blew my mind. And I was like, there's no way. Like okay, hold on. And I just got sucked in from there. And also it helped that he was very attractive and I was very into my like vampire goth, like heavy metal phase. And I grew up with a lot of like, 80s rock and like early 90s, like
me too.
grunge and metal and stuff, but it wasn't until I was like late in high school when I discovered Chris Angel that I discovered things like Cell Dweller, and some of his other like mutuals. And I got really into Godsmack and stuff and just sort of like branched into like really niche places from there. And so it's kind of funny because I blame Chris Angel while also thanking him for like my interest in magic like deepening, and also like the level of art and like music that I was connected to, and the different things I didn't know were all kind of connected.
Right.
That are now like really big, so I can just go online and find stuff, no problem. But when I was a teenager, nobody was into that stuff, and those who were, we didn't know how to connect. There wasn't as much, open-ended connection like we have with social media
totally
now.
Different
So
back then, totally
yeah,
different.
and this was still like early aughts, so it wasn't like super long ago. But the early internet era and the early aughts was like, that was a lot happening. Like I remember when YouTube first launched and stuff, and that's where I would go and try to find all my Chris Angel videos, and I didn't understand how all this stuff got onto the internet. But yeah, I got really into his stuff, and then I dove really hard into doing magic and like trying to connect with magicians. And in the small town I was living in that I grew up in, my mom came home one day and was like, hey, there's a magic show coming to town. And I was like, no, wait, what? And she was like, yeah, it'll be at the Rialto. Maybe we could go. And I think it was like summertime, and it was like a weekend. I was supposed to hang out with my dad. And so my mom helped us get tickets so that me and my dad could go see the magic show, because my dad would get really excited about my magic stuff too sometimes. And
that's cool.
We would hang out on the weekends and stuff. And so my dad and I went to this show, and that's where I met Dan Sperry, which if you haven't looked him up, amazing guy. Love him. He was like my big brother in magic. Big goth dude, does like really like nerdy like emo kid level stuff that you just way back in the day, he did a lot of like shock magic, and I met him and then connected with him and a few other people. And then I went to a magic convention that I ended up getting sponsored for, um, because we couldn't afford for me to go, but it was something I was really driven for. And I didn't know at the time, but it was put on by Lance Burton, who's a friend of mine. And, or at least I think of him like that. Like I talk to him occasionally, but uh, him and Eugene Berger and Jeff McBride and I believe it was Gerard the Hypnotist and oh, who was the other one? There was a couple of other people that were like really heavily involved in it, and then my friends Becky and Bill weren't magicians, but they ran with it, and Chris
Mm-hmm.
Angel would do stuff, and so they had like teen weekend where everybody would go to Lance Burton's house and hang out and talk about magic and connect and just
That's
sort of have
cool.
a cool time connecting. And then they had classes and groups where they would talk about how to perform and ways to write your stories and places to go for certain resources and utilities and supplies and stuff. And yeah, the first I was such an outsider because I was sort of more of a fan of magic. I make jokes. I'm Miss B, the cat, but I'm a fangirl of magic, and so
Mhm.
like all my tricks have like a suggestion to who I learned it from, or like a magician or a band or something I'm interested in.
Right.
Like I love Inuyasha, so I'm working on trying to do some kind of card trick or something with
That's so
some of my
neat.
little Inuyasha stuff. And the first year I was there, Chris Angel walked in like into Lance's like unannounced, just kind of showed up to excite everybody. Because at first people were like, "Oh, he's not going to be there," and I was like, "No, no." When I was in high school, I was like, "I'm going to work for Chris Angel someday. We're going to meet. We're going to hang out. It's going to be a cool time. It's going to be amazing."
It,
And everybody was like, "Yeah, whatever." And then it happened, and like my whole world was just like imploded, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is real!" Like that's where I figured out years later that manifestation works. And boy, did I manifest that stuff because all kinds of crazy stuff came from there. But yeah, I met him and I was so overwhelmed with everything. Like he was just sort of like the cherry on top of a good time.
Absolutely. He was
But like
huge back in the day. He was
oh,
huge.
absolutely.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, even my wife watched him. Like was like
Deservedly so too, because he was doing stuff that people weren't doing at the time.
yeah.
And it opened a lot of really cool doors, especially for magicians. I keep hitting my headphones.
That's okay. No,
I'm
I'm
so
fascinated. So
excited.
yeah, Chris Angel. So you mean he walks in the door. That must have, like you said, that was the cherry on top.
Yeah. We shook hands and he was like, "Oh, hi." And I was like, and I went to call my dad and I was like, "Dad, guess what?" And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "I'm at Lance Burton's house." And he was like, "Who?" And I was like,
Who?
"Lance Burton." And then I had to describe who Lance was. And I was like, and Jeff McBride is here. And my dad's like, "The guy with the kabuki masks." And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Oh, wow." And I was like, and then Chris Angel just shook my hand. And he was like, "What?" He was like, "Chris Angel? You're hanging out with Chris Angel?" Nah. And I just started crying. I just started like bawling my eyes out, and everybody was making fun of me. And I was so embarrassed because I was like, "You don't understand. It's not because of Chris Angel, it's in addition to Chris Angel."
Right.
like
Yeah.
I was hanging out with Banachek. Like, oh my god, Banachek is one of the coolest people I ever met for sure. Him and Lance, sweetest dudes. Eugene Berger was just like this grandpa. He was just like this older uncle that everyone had. And Jeff McBride is incredible. He's always been super kind to me. He's very encouraging. And all these kids at the time that are like now big names for some people, like my friend Leah Orlean. She does a lot of acrobatic stuffs, and she was in the group Acrobat Tricks. If you go to any of the Renaissance festivals,
Okay.
Leah's my girl. She also went by Star Power. And she's got a show now, Tiny Girl Big Show, and she's touring, which is really cool. I
That
remember us
is
being
cool.
like 13, 14, 15 years old, like going to these conventions. And Bill Cook is someone out there that's been doing incredible magic, and I got my friend TJ Tana and stuff like that. So there's a lot of people. Hiroki Hara. I met Hiroki, for those who may know his name. Like I met Hiroki when we were like 16 or 17.
That's fascinating.
There's just like so many people. Like I met David Blaine, super chill dude. Um, Not the personality I was expecting based on the things people would say versus his like TV shows. But I got to meet all those people, and it was really, really cool. And so like now we're all doing things. I mean, they're doing much more interesting things, I think, to the public than I am. But yeah, and then I ended up going back a couple of times to that convention, and then I had a few people who helped me out, Charlotte Pendragon. When she and her husband separated, she was doing magic on her own, and she asked me to be her onstage assistant. I'd never really performed in my life. I knew some tricks, but I'd never been like on a stage.
Right.
And we opened up for the amazing Jonathan, which was really cool and terrifying at the
I was
time.
just gonna ask you, how
And
is that your first time on stage?
I
Like,
was so nervous. Everyone said I did an incredible job and they said I looked like a natural. And the whole time I was freaking out. I don't know what I looked like. I never got to see the videos. Everyone was really nice. So I'm hoping that, um, even if it wasn't true, they were trying to just make me feel better. um, but I was a nervous wreck, but they said I did really well. So I mean, it was pretty simple stuff, but it was really cool. And then I made friends with Amazing Jonathan, and when I moved to Vegas, because of him, I got to hang out with Chris Angel. My mom came out while I was working for him, and we went to Chris Angel's house. We were all invited, and we had dinner and stuff, and that was really cool.
what kind of guy is he off camera?
Chris,
Yeah.
at the time, it was right before he had like a weird downfall and was doing some crazy stuff. So it was like kind of like not the height or peak necessarily of a success. It was like a tier right under that. But when I met him, he was one of the sweetest, chillest dudes. Like he was super nice. He was super traumatized from the fame though. He was sharing some like wild stories about some of the crazy fans that he'd had that actively like caused him a lot of like permanent harm, like
Mm-hmm.
mentally and emotionally, which was really sad. But he was a super cool guy. We both did the same thing, listening to a Pantera song while he had this cookout, and like everybody was kind of walking in front of each other. No one was paying attention. I was sitting in a chair. I was just kind of like dancing along like I would. I was thinking of my dad at the time. I was like, yo, dad would think this is so neat. Hanging out with Michael Goddard and Chris Angel and Amazing Joy. Like, I'm so cool right now. And then like all the people sat down and it was coming to the end of the song. And me and Chris were both just like doing one of these and we both reached up and did this like rock star thing. And then we like looked at each other and it was just like, it was like it was a really cool moment for me.
I can imagine. And it's you bring up a good point too, because I think of like I don't think people think of that with famous people, the trauma that they go through. And I mean, like I'm sure like he
Man,
wasn't ready for like he like I tell you guys like I'm sure people listening right now some might not even know who we're talking about. Chris Angel, the magician, back in his when he was hitting, he was huge. I mean, I can't
huge.
emphasize that enough. He was everywhere. He was like doing, and then I remember he was doing shows at the casino. Like he had his own
Mm-hmm.
like a residence, huge. So I mean, that's like I really don't think people realize, and I'm glad that you brought that up. That there is a negative side to this fame that you just said.
Oh
Like,
man. And some of the things that Chris had shared went back to like a spiritual thing where like people in the church would blame him for like weird demonic stuff, and he
wow.
was just always blamed for all this like weird stuff. And I'm like, okay, just because you got some screws loose up here does not mean that this performer, an actor, an entertainer is not responsible because you don't know what reality is, you know. And I remember him sharing some of those stories and they were just heartbreaking because, you know, he's getting blamed for all this stuff that people are doing, and it's like there was one story he shared. I won't go into too much detail because I don't know like how much people do or don't know, but there was one particular fan that ended up taking their life, and their family sued Chris Angel, and it's because the kid was obsessed. He had Chris Angel everything, newspaper articles, magazines, printed photos, just his floor to ceiling in his room was just covered in Chris Angel, anything that you could have made in the
That's
day.
first red
And
flag.
it scared Chris. They
Yeah.
made Chris come into the room and look, and they were like, "This, he worships you. You're like a god to him. Like he sacrificed his faith, this kind of stuff." And Chris was just like, "Oh my god, like
I'm a
this is a
magician, guys.
lot."
Yeah.
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 And you know, and he was just like, "It's not fair to be blamed for this. Like I didn't do anything to your kid. I don't even know who you people are."
Yeah.
You know, there was just some people in a small town like out on the East Coast, and you know, and Chris is a really humble dude. At least when I had met him,
Mm-hmm.
you know, he's had his moments. I've seen him with some moments where he was not humble.
Yeah.
But you know, it was crazy to hear some of the stuff he went through. You know, there'd be people who would find out where he lives and just like stalk him, which was mistaken for some of the weird things that I did, just trying to show people things that I liked about Vegas, including Chris Angel. But I knew a bunch of people who knew Chris, but there were people I interacted with who didn't know who I was and didn't know that I knew Chris on a
Right.
personal level. And so I definitely I struggled with some social stuff when I was younger because I didn't realize that I was being weird to most people.
Well, yeah,
Um,
but I mean, when you're
so,
young,
but I was
but
like 18, so that
yeah, I
was
get
like,
that, and but when you're bringing up the stories too about the fans, the crazy fans, because we both, I obviously I can tell you, heavy metal. You hear
oh
about
yeah,
a lot of the bands like got blamed for that. Like you remember Ozzy, Judas
oh for
Priest,
sure.
they were
Yep.
blamed for everything. And then you would go to concerts. I remember going to concerts myself, and there would be a church group out there just giving it to us out there like you're satanic, and I'm thinking you don't even know me. I'm so far from satanic. I don't know where, but
Right.
they really do pin that on people. It's crazy. Like I'm just like,
It's
wow.
it's wild. When I started getting into magic and I was kind of in my like super goth phase, like I'd still be in it if I didn't have to have like corporate jobs and like retail jobs and stuff like that. Not corporate like, business, but
Right.
like, retail and stuff. But they all have like really drab, expectations of your outfits and stuff. And so I couldn't wear a lot of the stuff that I enjoyed as a teenager, but I totally would if I could.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. I
but
love goth look. Goth is awesome.
right, goth is goth is a lifestyle. We just can't always be in it 24/7. It's not a
Exactly.
phase.
Exactly. I tell that about heavy
um,
metal too. I've been a heavy metal fan since oh my god, like 10 years old. And
it's so
and I always
good.
tell people, I'm like, you don't grow out of it. And everybody's like, you'll grow out of that. I'm like, no, it's a lifestyle. I don't grow out of
Yeah,
it.
it
I still
is.
listen to
Yeah.
metal every day. So I don't know. It's not a phase to me.
Look, being cool is not a phase, okay? When you're cool, it's just how you live.
It's just how you live. It's just a way of life.
Yeah. And it's funny
Fascinating.
too because like with all that stuff, hearing, because I've made a few famous friends and they've all shared really crazy experiences like that too. And it was more interesting even than when Chris would dive deeper into it and be like, look, these people are blaming me for like weird black magic and stuff. He's like, I'm Catholic, firstly, like,
Hmm.
which I now am like, well, that's not any better. Like,
I know.
I got a lot of opinions on the Catholic Church, but that's maybe a whole other story. But he was like, I'm Catholic, and when I met him, there were crucifixes all on every surface. There was Jesus stuff on everything he could put it on, and his downstairs bathroom had Jesus on the cross, like at the size of me, just in the bathroom, like
Wow.
watching you on the toilet, which was really weird.
That is
I don't
kind of,
know if that
I
was
was
just
going to
they
say,
didn't have
that's kind
anywhere
of
else to
weird.
put it, or if there was like something wrong with that bathroom. It was the most uncomfortable I've ever been, to be sure, because that stuff makes me just very anxious. I don't like going to churches that have like big crucifix stuff. Like it just makes me so uncomfy because I'm like,
Well,
one,
yeah, and then you're in a bathroom
why?
with it.
Yeah, a
That's,
closed space, everyone's outside, it's dark, it's down a creepy hallway. Like it was like the house is gorgeous, but there was just some spooky things about it that you would never catch me staying in that house after dark.
wow.
Nope. Nope.
But
Nope.
I like this is a great segue because I had to ask you about Chris Angel because I remember you and Bill,
It
you
was fun.
guys hit on it really quickly during the interview that I heard
Yeah.
a few days ago, and I was like, I got to ask you about it because my wife was a huge fan. I was a fan, but not like most people. Like I mean, I get
Yeah.
the people like how big he was. My wife really liked his work. So now you said that you realized at one point that magic broke off. That there is, I don't know. I'd say I don't know the terminology, so forgive me. Entertaining magic, and then do you think now there's an other side to magic, a real magic?
I always say magic with a K because you
Okay,
have like
fair enough.
magic Magic, and then
Yep,
you have Magick. And I always say that magic with a K is like the real stuff.
and then you
Um,
realize that at some point.
yeah, it was right before I moved to Vegas and met Chris Angel. Actually, it was before I went to the conventions. Actually, I think I was 16 and I'd been really into researching witchcraft and stuff for a while because something happened at school. I met this girl and we were talking about magic and stuff, and she asked if I'd read a certain book. It was called Gothic Grimoire, and I was like, no, I've never heard of it. And I was getting into magic, like sponge balls, like card
Mm-hmm.
tricks and stuff. And I wanted to learn more about being a mentalist because a lot of mentalism I saw back in the day, people, it was like they could really read your mind. They could see things.
Yeah,
People, they would pull information out of you. And I didn't realize a lot of it is a setup. I didn't know at the time a lot of it was bull stuffs.
you can swear. Go ahead.
Okay. I didn't know that it was all just absolutely being pulled out of people's behinds.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I want to know how to do that. And I just assumed it was all real because I was very naive and a young person. And I looked up something. There was a mentalist I had met. I want to say, gosh, I can't think of his name. And it's always in like a position like this where I'm like, if I bring up his name, people are going to be weird. And then Luke Germain, that
Okay.
was his name. I did like processing all the crazy stuff. Luke Germain was someone that I met through Chris Angel also, and he was super cool. And we didn't actually become friends until like long after the show had kind of stopped. And sorry, I keep touching my hair. But I met him when he was dating my friend Jessica at the time. But he was telling me about Hellstromism and mentalism and like mind reading and cold reading. And I didn't realize that those are all technically different things. I thought that was all just more gobbledygook for doing magic tricks and making them look fancy. And it turns out that Hellstromism is an actual telepathic exercise
Really?
to,
Okay.
yes. And I did it to people a lot when I was a kid, and I didn't realize that was a thing I could just do. And then when I started actively doing it, I realized that people will feel when people are prying in your subconscious. And knowing that I was able to do that and still do, I pick up on things from people almost like I don't know if like subconsciously like spiritually I just like knock on their door and they like open it and they just like dump on me. But I'll just be minding my business in a grocery store and I'll see something because I get like a download of information that tells me something is going on. And so I'll turn to like process what the information is. And sometimes people, strangers, will just come up to me and just start spilling the beans. They'll just start telling me stuff. And I'm just like, that's a lot of information, sir.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get some yogurt. Um, like, did you even ask me my name? And there will be times where if I know somebody is telling me something that's a lie, I have this ability to just kind of like go in behind them and like flip a switch and like find out whatever I need to and then like leave again. And part of it is intuition. My mom was really good with that for a long time. She would always say my woman's intuition will kick in, and she would just say something or have a suspicion,
Mm-hmm.
and she would investigate and she would just find stuff out. And I found out from my grandmother that that's just like an ability that the women in our family have, is like, one, we'll find out. So no matter what, it's going to come to me. And whether it comes to me naturally or I have to go find it, I will find out. And so I would tell that to people a lot too, was like, don't lie to me or try to twist me around, because sometimes it takes me a minute to like process and like figure out what exactly is being said or what the misleading is. But I always can get that information almost like I'm scooping it or taking like papers out of a file or whatever. And when I learned that Hellstromism is you actively reaching that part of your consciousness, your brain, or whatever you want to call it, whatever access you have up here
Mm-hmm.
spiritually, and you can go into other people's personal space and pull out information. But you can get information by having them subconsciously make physical movements. Sometimes people answer back in the same energy or waves or whatever. I can't remember. The dude explained it. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Something Constantine. Um, but he was talking about how you can just tap into that stuff, and it's super easy. It's literally just focusing in on stuff. And it kind of reminded me of like people in martial arts who meditate really heavy.
Right.
They just sort of receive information well before it comes out of someone's mouth sometimes, and it's the same technique. It's just used differently. And when paired with like actual magic, like spells and stuff, like using your intention to cast the spell, I've learned that that's how things tend to come out faster and more accurately. And so I just assumed this was all just like easy performative stuff. And then I dove into that particular guy's more of his works, and I found Gothic Grimoire, which was the book the other girl had
Mm-hmm.
suggested. But when it started saying that there was like blood magic involved and it would use like knives and things, I was like, that's
A little
that's
intense.
going down a little bit of a dark path here. and
Yeah.
and I've always had like a weird affinity, both negatively and otherwise, for like demonic stuffs, ghost stories, hauntings, and things. I was really drawn to that for a long time, and I couldn't figure out why. And I still don't quite understand. I think it's just part of my path, as being able to interact with some of that dark, spooky, icky stuff.
Right.
Because it's not necessarily negative intentionally, and it's not necessarily evil. Sometimes that's just where it is. It's not a strong enough entity to ascend, It just sits in some of those murkier levels. And so if you tap into some of that stuff, like you're gonna find things, you know. And I started buying all kinds of books on witchcraft and stuff. Just I think it was Nocturnal Magic was the one book that really got me into stuff, and it was talking about things you can do at night specifically, that can help with like manifesting or like um, just casting and what's the word, conjuring.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, that's really neat. And I think of all this stuff like in video game terms because I grew up playing EverQuest. And so you could like conjure stuff and you could make things teleport and you could heal and you could root and ground and, you know, you could bind your soul so that if you died, you go to a certain place and it's easier to find your body and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, you can just do that for real? Because some people would say that, like, oh, yeah, that's real. You can just do that stuff. And I was like, okay. And I've always been really skeptical. So it's funny that all this really wild stuff happens and people are like, and you just believed it? And I'm like, look, man, I ask a lot of questions, but after some of the stuff I've been through, it's just, you know, you can't deny it after a certain point. It's like, no, that happened.
It's so
Like, I don't know
true.
what that was, but it happened.
That I've listened to so many people who are experiencers. I mean that's the best term I can come up with, who have experienced things. And I was telling you off air, and I said at the beginning of my video that what got me looking down the path of this whole, like all of what you're talking about, it sounds so familiar because I kind of was in this. I'm not so much in the magic aspect of like I like magic. I liked watching people perform it, but I did look into witchcraft. I've always been somebody that's always searching. And what got
Hmm.
me on that path was I was saying at the beginning that my mom had an experience when she was very young that now she's in like 75 and she still remembers it to a T. Nothing's faded. And then that's how I know they really affected her. And she was telling me when she
Yeah.
was a little girl that she was in the house, and back in those days, she it was my grandmother who was raising her, and so she was like it was just them two. So you just kind of like as your kids got older, you kind of let they took care of themselves when the parent went to work, and that's just
Right.
how things were back then. And my mom was saying that she heard this weird humming in her head, and it she was like in it, and then I'm trying to remember exactly how she worded it, so it's going to be a little sketchy because I can't do it as
Okay.
good as she can, not give it justice. But she heard like this hum that was in her head, like a vibration that made her go outside, and she went outside with her dog, and she said next thing she knows there's this big light that just shot down on her, like you're kind of describing this energy beam that she felt. She said the dog ran under the deck, under the porch. The dog just was like, I'm out
Oh
of
my
here. This is,
gosh.
yeah, I'm done. Like I'm
Dog was like,
done.
I'm out, dude.
Yeah, so that's a part of the story that I find fascinating is the dog. I'll say something in a second, but yeah, so the dog booked it under the deck or the front porch. And then my mom, so young, she was very young, she said, and she just remembered being so scared that she started running and dove under a big tree and like put her hands over her ears, and she just curled up in a ball. She was so scared. And she remembered looking over at the house that was just across the road, and there was no light on that house. It was just over top of her.
Oh my
And so
gosh.
that's what she remembers. And then she remembers kind of coming to under the tree. She doesn't know how long it was. And she went, like, kind of was really confused, went back to the house. The dog didn't come out from under that porch for like 20 hours. The dog, like, would not
Oh,
come out. Like, he was that scared of whatever she experienced. And then she even went to the neighbors. Like, she told my grandmother, they went to the neighbors and said, did you see this bright light over the house? Because that's what my mom was saying. And so that's the first time I've ever told that story. But my mom, even to this day, when she tells this story, you can see the
man,
fear, like the fear in her. Like she gets goosebumps, she turns white. It's something happened to her, and
I
she,
believe that.
yeah, and
That's how
she,
my dad gets.
yeah, and she just didn't understand. She doesn't know like there's no one being up in a ship and she doesn't remember any of that. She just remembers the sound, the big light, and then her diving under the tree and
Man.
hiding. Just fascinating. That's what got me on my path of looking into this because I just know my mother and she's not lying. Like this affected
Yeah.
her.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of older folks with stories like that where they're like, I have no idea what happened. I don't remember anything. I remember being terrified
Yep.
and then the next day happened and I just went on with my life. And I'm like, man, the first time that stuff happened to me, I went absolutely bonkers. Like I literally lost my mind. I couldn't stop talking about it. I couldn't stop obsessing about it. I was not sure if I should cry or laugh or be excited or
Mm-hmm.
all of them. And everyone else I know that's had those experiences, most of my friends get really uncomfortable and they won't talk about it. You can see if I bring it up, they start having anxiety
That's
attacks.
my
They
mom.
get
Yep.
shaky.
Yep.
And I'm just like, man, I kind of feel bad that I get so much enjoyment out of these experiences because I just get so excited to tell people, even if it was terrifying. I have some of the scariest stories, and the way I tell them, it scares people for sure. And I'm over here like, blah, blah, it's all cool. And everyone else is like, no, dude, that's traumatizing. I need therapy just listening to your stories. Like,
Yeah.
that's why is that so much fun for you? And I'm like, well, it is now. At the time, I
At the,
was not excited about
right.
it. Like,
It's
but
really
man, that
fascinating.
I wonder
Yeah.
what the dog saw because you always hear about what people experience, but you almost never hear about the effect it has on animals, which
Oh,
is something
their
that's always
dog. Yeah.
interested me.
It just like
Because
my mom said that they had to coax the dog out eventually with food and stuff because he was
oh,
that scared. Like, and my mom's like, I don't know
poor
what
guy.
what he saw, and she doesn't. And I really like my mom because she does. She's never embellished on it. It's never been like, oh, I remember I got sucked up in a UFO, or I remember. It's always just been the same story that the sound in her head, which she said like, and then the neighbor said they didn't hear anything. Like because they went and asked the neighbor, like, did you see a light? Did you hear anything? And they're like, nothing. It was pitch black over there.
Man,
And my mom's like, well, my dog is under the deck, and something scared him, and she knows what she saw and she heard. And it's just, I mean, you can see it in her face when she tells the story. Very rarely she'll tell me it. I'll just say, can you tell me more about it? Always the same.
hmm,
And you never hear about the animals though, but it definitely affected the animal. Like her dog was not happy with whatever was going on.
I feel that. Yeah, my old lady, Cashmere, she I've had a few crazy experiences, and when I was living with my ex, she there was just I don't know, there were days where she would just be absolutely out of her gourd, just a crazy, terrified little animal. And she's all sleeping soundly and stuff now. But like her and my other cat, Bagheera, they would just be different
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And for a while, I felt like they were using Cashmere to spy on me because she would just be doing stuff. And then it was like, you could just tell her eyes weren't her eyes and what was looking back was not her. And it would make me so uncomfortable all the time. And I always wonder, like, if it affects me the way it does, and I know that people are remote accessing me and looking through my eyes and processing my surroundings and information and people around me. I don't know who's doing it or why or what information they're looking for. So it always makes me wonder, like, what does it do to the animals? Because I've met other people whose dogs were affected, whose cats were affected, birds just died after certain people's experiences. And it's, you know, animals I feel like don't have any of those. They might be sentient, but I don't think they have any kind of experiences like that normally.
Mm-hmm.
And if it does, the animal is actually a person.
Yeah.
Like we used to make jokes about my cat being a prince trapped in a cat's body because he upset the wrong witch or something, and she like made him live as a kitty cat. But there were times where even Bagheera would be like freaked out and uncomfortable, and he never hissed. He was not a violent cat. He was never like he was just such a good boy. And there
Right.
were times where I would go pick him up and he would just freak out and his claws would come out and he would run off, and I'd be all angry and pissed and just like trying to wash off the blood off my arms because I'm like, you just ripped me open, man. Like, what are
Yeah.
you doing? And he'd be like, oh no. But he would just have that look on his eyes that was like, I saw things, I can't unsee them. And it's like, oh man, I wish you could talk because like you doing okay, little buddy? Like,
Yeah.
geez.
And sometimes
Because
like
I
it freaks me out when you see cats too, or dogs. They'll just kind of walk around the room and be
they just
looking at
kind of go,
stuff. Yeah, and my cats do it all the time. Like, and it's at the
mm-hmm.
weirdest times, and I'm like,
Yep.
they'll just sit there and stare at the corner or something.
Yeah,
And
the twins are really bad at that, and they'll be minding their business, and then all of a sudden they'll wake up and just,
exactly.
and I'm like, what are you looking at? Stop it!
So
2 o'clock in the
what do
morning,
you
I'm
think?
going to
Like,
bed, and it's like,
what do you think? Are they seeing something, or are they just
oh,
being
for sure.
cats?
No, I mean, I believe aliens are cats. Cats are aliens. They are not from this planet at all. And cats just think that we're bigger cats, which means they think they're people. um,
It's true.
so and some cats have more personality than others, and that's the same for humans and dogs. But I've read some studies that said that dogs and cats, they can see more frequencies and colors than humans can,
Mm-hmm.
as do just about any animal and bug and whatnot. But cats can process information really well. And so even though kitty cats can't necessarily talk, they can understand enough at the level of like a 15-year-old high school student, I think. So like
Wow.
assuming that you've got a pretty decent education, like cats, they can understand a lot of that stuff. And some cats have ways to communicate with you. And if you're really close to your animal, I feel like you sort of hi Momo, you kind of you develop sort of a level of communication. You guys develop your own language. You can talk to each other in both languages and understand one another. um, but knowing that cats can see other frequencies and stuff, that means that they're seeing all kinds of waves and microbes and whatever else is
Mm-hmm.
in the air. And cats are very spiritual, and since a lot of cultures believe that cats kind of guard the doors to the other side, I
Right.
can only assume that they're seeing all kinds of washy ghosties and stuff. Because I mean, even here at the motel, like it doesn't normally. I was gonna bring this up with I don't remember which show it was with Slayers, but we were talking about house hauntings and stuff. Usually I pick up on that stuff,
I
like
was going
pulling
to
up
ask
into
you about
people's
this.
driveways. Like I know instantly if there's something. It comes out of my mouth before I even realize what's happening. I'll be like, yeah, your house is haunted, isn't it? Or like, oh yeah, there's something in your house. Or something will will activate, and I'll just be like, no, no, I'm good, thanks. And people are like, girl, we're over here. Who are you talking to? And it's like, oh, the spooky in your corner. And they're like, I've never told anyone about the spooky in the corner. How do you know what's spooky in the corner? And it's like, I can see him. Like it's
Really?
it's being spooky. Like and a lot of times people's spookies, ghoulies, whatever you want to call them, they don't like me. I could be minding my business and stuff will start flying across the room, or doors will start closing, lights will turn off, like weird energy will just appear, people start freaking out. When other people start freaking out, I know that I've upset whatever's in the house by just walking in. Something about my presence really just threatens energies. And most of the time I don't pick up on that's why I feel the energy. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I just walk in and I can sense things, and it's because they're coming at me, and my barriers are up. And if it wasn't if it wasn't for Solaris, talking about some stuff when it comes to like processing like spiritual boogies, I would not have realized that it's my presence that actually activates a lot of activity in people's houses and lives. And so some people just don't talk to me anymore because they're like, nope, every time you're here, some weird stuff happens. Every time you talk to me on the phone, weird stuff happens. And they're like, I like living a boring life. You don't need to open my reality globe. It's fine the way it is. And so some of my friends and I just don't talk as much anymore. We'll interact on
Wow.
Facebook, but they don't want anything to do with anything that I do.
So
And it
do you see them or do you feel them?
sometimes I usually see them, or I do see stuff, but oftentimes I hear it, like something inside just will I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like Solaris always says, like these physical bodies are our avatars, so there's
Yep.
still someone in control. So it's kind of like you're playing a video game and you happen to be in first person, but you also can see like all of this other information over here, and so
Mm-hmm.
you can make adjustments to the character's reactions depending on what other information you're processing. So if you're in a sort of third party, like I always feel like, or not third party, but like perspective, it feels like spiritually I can see like from over here, but I'm activated and interacting like from here, like in my physical. But if I don't see it right away, oftentimes something will pop up in my, what I call my like brain cameras. Like in my mind palace, there's like a little like security office, and something will ping up on like the little security streams, and I can be like, hey, we should pay attention to that.
Wow.
So, but when I can see it with my eyes, I get really uncomfortable because like that means that it has manifested strong enough to get my attention in physical reality. And usually that's a sign to like GTFO, like pack your
Mm.
shit and go.
Right. Yeah.
And it's happened a few times, and it gets me so anxious every time. Like, and it'll have me straight shook for days at a time if I can see it with my eyeballs.
I can imagine because I remember telling Bill, and I do know he told you on the show that the only it's happened to me once where I saw an aura, and I've told people before when I was younger I could see auras around living things, and now I that ability over
That's
time
cool.
went away. As I got
Mhm.
older, I lost it. I think as I got into my teens and got doing teen things, I shut
Yeah.
myself off to it. But I used to remember painting pictures at school, and I would do these auras that I would see around people and animals and plants and all of that. And everybody thought I was crazy because they're like, "Why are you painting these colors around stuff?" I'm like, "That's what I see. You told me to paint what I see."
Right.
So I
Oh
painted
my
it, and then
gosh.
I went to the eye doctor, and then the doctor's like, "Well, he's not seeing it around auras around everything. It's only living things." So that's what I would explain it. But I have lost that ability over time, and it'll come back. When I really start connecting with myself, it'll start to
Mhm.
come back, and then I lose it again. So it comes in and out. Mine's not a steady thing, and I've only
Mine is
ever.
also not steady.
Yeah, it's kind of random, and but I remember telling you, I was saying to Bill that only one time I saw an entity. I don't know what to say it was. But it was not. I couldn't see what it was. I just saw the aura around it, and it was
Wow.
very like alien looking. I don't if you kind of know what I mean. Like it didn't look like a human. It was really lanky, and I
Oh
saw
my
the
gosh.
aura. Yeah.
I've seen like weird just generic alien shapes that are just lanky and uncomfy to think about, like cryptids.
Yes.
Like when people talk about a cryptid, that's what I think of, and I'm like, I've seen those with my eyes, and other people were witnesses, and they were not the same after seeing that
Yeah,
stuff.
I didn't know what it was. I just knew it wasn't human. I was like, this is weird,
Hmm.
and it's the only time it's ever happened. It was years ago, but I still will never forget it. Seeing that, just the aura of it, and
Did
not.
it happen like outside at all, or
No,
was
it
it
was
like in your
inside.
house?
It was in my. Is that a
Oh my
bad thing?
gosh. No, I a lot of the stuff that happens to me, like where there's other people experiencing it, like
Right.
a lot of it happens outside. And when people have told me about the lanky aliens that they've seen, it's always outside. And I see them inside sometimes too. And so whenever they're in people's houses, I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, like well, I want to talk to you about that. Like, I mean, is and you don't have to if it's uncomfortable, you don't have to. But like,
I could talk about this
like
stuff for
what
days.
I mean, I'm very fascinated with, and I've watched, as I'm sure you have, and people listening, hundreds of documentaries on people that are being abducted. They talk about their
Hmm.
experiences. What can you talk about? What has happened to you? That whatever is, like I said, if it's not comfortable, don't talk about it. But I'm curious to your experiences with that.
Um,
Have you been brought into a ship? Have you been that you
I've had
remember?
I've had so many things happen. I have been brought onto and into several ships, and they're never the same kind of ship either. I've had different dimensional experiences too. Like there's a few I described to Solaris where she was like, "Wow, that's like you remember all that?" And I was like, "Yeah, like very detailed. Like I could draw it." And she's like, "That's that's really cool." She's like, that's some deep stuff because like
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't you don't usually come back with a lot of memories. And the first few experiences I had, unless I was lucid, I could not tell you what happened. I remember feeling things happened. Like I remember having memories like physically of stuff happening and bruises, and I would kind of have like gray wash experience, like flashbacks almost. But I've had all kinds of experiences. There was one, well, so the first one I was telling you with the like Stargate
Yeah.
energy that came down, that was my first conscious abduction as an adult where I was like, I this is happening. And when I got zooted through space, it was so uncomfortable. I literally remember just like violently spinning through space, like off planet, just in a line, just through space. And I don't know how else to describe it other than I zooted through space, and it was so unsettling. It still kind of leaves like a weird like a pump of adrenaline in me sometimes when I think about it, because remembering just how uncomfortable and crazy it was, because it was reality breaking. You know, I was like, there's no there, like you're having so many thoughts at the same time of like,
Right.
there's no way this is happening. Also, was that Jupiter? And then suddenly you're like on a ship and you're like, this looks like a set of Star Trek. Like, there's no way this is real. This is not happening. And then you're seeing beings and things, and you're just like, this has to be a nightmare. This is a weird
Right.
dream.
That's what I
I'm
would
gonna wake
think.
up. Am I on the set of Star Wars? Did I not realize I've been in a movie this whole time? Like it's so it's literally like, just it turns your brain to scrambled eggs. And I think that's why a lot of people have a hard time processing it and like talking about it, is because you have to face the reality of, if you talk about it and you think about it and you dive into it, you have to recognize that like that's a thing that happened, that you didn't just make that up. because other people can account. I've met people in real life on the street who recognized me from an abduction experience. Um,
Really?
and that's something that freaks me out. Like I get really excited to think about it, but then when it happens, it makes me uncomfortable because if I don't recognize them, I can no longer tell if they were just an experiencer. Are you an abductee? Were you part of this thing? Like, did you know these things were happening to me? What happened to you? Are you a handler? Like it makes me question a lot of things. Oftentimes it's just someone who's like, hey, I've seen you before. And then they tell me about an abduction that I was just telling someone else about. And so it freaks me out because I'm like, how did you know? I was
That would
literally just
freak
talking
the
about this. This is
shit out of me.
crazy.
Oh my
Yeah.
god, if I
And
was just walking by and somebody said, I know you, and they tell
yeah,
you about
someone,
the experience, oh my god.
there was a guy who found me in a grocery store one time and told me about a time one of my best friends from childhood and I were abducted. And it was crazy because I had just told my UFO group that story. And this dude didn't know that there were groups. I turned him into a bunch of the Facebook groups and,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and I have not had any interaction with him since. Kind of sad because I'm like, I hope he's
Right.
okay because some people have just disappeared, and I don't know if that was like a chosen action or if it just they were disappeared. I don't know. It makes me very uncomfortable though because sometimes people just vanish after talking to me, and I'm like, was that a real person? like
Right.
like what just happened? But yeah, there was the one where I woke up on the first experience. I woke up on an operating table. Like it was. I remember recalling the experience and being like, disclaimer, this sounds like those crazy alien stories where people wake up in an operating room and then they wake up in the middle of a field butt naked and I have no idea what year it is. I was put back in my house and had like every level of confusion. I've woken up without clothes in my own house. I've woken up with my clothes inside out and backwards in my sleep. Like I can always tell when I've been abducted and dropped back off because my brain will feel like it's been microwaved. My clothes will be all messed up. Things will be knocked over or missing in my house. I've had action figures stolen. I've had art stolen off the wall, and people are like, "Oh yeah, well that means someone came into your house." And I'm like, "Yeah, they took me with them at first, and then they dropped me back off." Like I've had whole pillows and blanket sets just disappear, like the whole bedding just gone, and I wake up on an empty mattress, no pillow, no blanket, no cover, and it's like I was just in bed 2 hours ago in my blankets. Where to go? And it's gone. It's not in the house. I didn't like sleepwalk and put it in a drawer. Like gone. Like
Wow.
that stuff. It doesn't happen like that as much anymore. But when it was first happening and I was like seeing it all the time and like experiencing it 24/7, it was really frustrating. People would get mad at me and be like, "Where's this thing? And why is this gone? And what's?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know. I was sleeping and then I woke up and I was naked and there was no bed sheets. I was drinking tea and I had a bowl of cereal and I came back and everything but the tablet was gone. I don't know, man." And people would just be like, "B, what are you doing?" And I'm like, I was just existing. I was watching YouTube. I don't
Right.
like I thought I was gone for 6 months and really it's been 10 minutes. So I don't have answers for you.
That's what I was gonna ask you. Is it long? So you've had missing time, obviously. Um,
a lot.
like
I
is
have a
it
lot of
big
missing
gaps?
time.
Is it big gaps or is it small gaps of
Um,
time?
there are some chunks of my memory that are just like just gone entirely. Like it like what's the word? When you have like I have like corrupted memories where like I can see that there was something there and it's almost like an image in my brain, but it's like completely blurred out and there's no information coming through except for like a feeling. And so sometimes I can recognize abduction experiences or like interactions, but I have no idea what happened. I don't know how long it took. And then like periods of time after that will just be gone. I have several weeks and several months of memories that are just I don't know what
They're
happened.
not
I don't
there.
know if that was like, yeah, they're just gone. And people will bring up memories. Remember this one thing? Oh my god, we told ourselves we'd never forget. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it's not because I don't want to remember or that it wasn't significant. There's a literal piece in my brain that's just empty. It just there's just a hole there now in the memory. And people are like, "Oh, don't do so many drugs." And it's like I've only ever done a handful of hallucinogens and I
Right.
smoke weed sometimes. Like I'm not someone that has like brain rot. I haven't like fried out on anything. I don't drink excessively. I don't have any reason. I don't even take medications. So I don't have any normal people reasons for my memories to just be gone. I know that there were times where Elo, the little alien I've talked about before, it was a little scientist that
You
was
have to tell
observing
us
me
because
for a
I'm
while.
sure people do not know who Elo is.
Oh my gosh, I miss him so much. He,
Okay, who is
I've never
Elo?
Elo is this little ET scientist that I interacted with on accident one time when I did make mushroom tea, but it wasn't enough to actually like go into a full trip. It was just enough to make me relax and open to certain things,
Okay.
and I wasn't hallucinating visually. I wasn't even hearing anything. I felt just kind of stoned, or like, if you eat an edible and it's a little bit on edge, and you can kind of feel hazy, but
But
you're
you're
like,
still there.
yeah,
You're
you're
still there.
pretty solid,
Yeah.
And I was watching something stupid. I was like Ancient Aliens or something. And at the time, I had my couch, and then the TV was against the wall, and there was like a table next to the TV with a bunch of my papers and stuff on it because I'm an artist and I have doodles and supplies everywhere, and like all over my bed is yarn right now. And I was just chilling. The coffee table was in front of me, and I was just like vibing. And I believe we had the ferrets at the time, so I was hearing noises, and I remember like looking down the hall, and the ferrets were asleep. The cats were nowhere to be found. Dog was upstairs with my mom. And I was like, okay, it's because I made mushroom tea, like, duh.
Yeah.
And so I went back to watching TV, and then other stuff started happening in the house. I could hear people talking, and it sounded like footsteps walking around, and I sounded like I was in like a busy, like an office or like a medical lab, or something where there's just a lot of people, and I could hear like glass tinking, and I could hear like microwaves or refrigerators or some kind of mechanism like opening, like doors opening and engines and stuff. And it sounded almost like a classroom or like just like a generic, public space. And I was like, that's weird. It is like 2 o'clock in the morning. And actually, no, I think it was like 11 at night. I think it was even earlier. I think it was 11. And I was just kind of like, that's an unusual amount of noise for my house at this time.
Yeah.
Like, we
I get
weren't
it.
like in a busy neighborhood, you'd hear cars and stuff, but this was like in my
You know
house. But
your
it's,
house. I know my house just
yeah,
by sound. If it's not normal sound, I know.
yeah. And it's
Yeah.
like, so I'm already ready for weird stuff because this was just a couple years after it all started happening. And so I was like, okay, something's up. And then all of a sudden, I happened to look over. I heard like papers rustling, and I instantly snapped my attention to the table, and papers fell down. Like they were knocked over.
Mm-hmm.
And then the table was bumped, like someone fell into it, and I could hear a person or something fall into it, make a weird sound, and fall on the ground. And then someone else was like shushing them and trying to get them to be quiet. And I'm sitting on the couch, just kind of like,
These are killer
I know,
mushrooms. That's what I'd be thinking.
yeah, I was like, listen, I know I'm high, but what is happening right now? And I remember just out loud being like, no. And everything went silent. And it was like everyone stopped moving and they were waiting. And I'm staring at the same space. And I was like, I don't know who is there, but I need you to skedoodle
Mm-hmm.
outdoor, go get some space noodles out.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what's happening, but I'm not interested right now. I was like, I am high and this is not a good time. I'm very vulnerable. So if you're not here to hurt me and you're not here to fight, I need you to go. I'm not in a mental place to process what's happening. And then all of a sudden, everything just like there was this big ripple that happened. Like, I don't know, as if I was inside of like gelatin or something. And all of a sudden, part of my house disappeared. And there was just a lab and like little people. And they were all in these suits, like little, they looked like
Like
something
the
between like
grays,
a,
like typical gray that people think of.
um, I don't know, because the grays that I saw don't match anyone else's description. So I don't know if they just happened to be the color gray. I don't know if they were
Okay.
just not grays, but um, they kind of look like, I don't know, I guess kind of a generic alien. More, their heads were a lot more round, and some of them had like little antennae, and some of them just had like really, they looked like frogs almost, like a cartoon frog, where they weren't quite, you know, thick. Like they had necks. They were very humanoid, but I would consider them to look more like frogs or like geckos. Geckos. I would say they
Geckos.
look more like a
I've heard
gecko.
people say this. Wow.
Yeah, because like they had big eyes and their mouths and face were not quite like rectangular like a lizard, you know. And I've seen like lizard beings that looked more like little alligators, or like the one the 1 6 foot gator I saw. But these, they had more of like a gecko vibe. Like they weren't there to hurt anybody. They were definitely unsettling because I was like, I'm high. This is the mushrooms. This is absolutely, I'm tripping balls. And I was not. I like internally I was like, nah, no, this is a thing that's happening. Like this is not the we don't usually hallucinate things like this. Like
Right.
usually it's just like sparkly stuff. And I remember the one Elo was in kind of like a lab coat, but it also kind of looked like a generic like space suit. Like there was access for a helmet if needed. Excuse me, but it was a lot more sterile, but like they just looked like little scientists, like something you would see in like high school when you're in your biology lab. Like it was very simple. And then there was another one that was, I think, a female. She had more feminine features, so I just assumed she's female, but I never got a name for her, so she's just always Elo's science girlfriend to me.
Right.
And I remember her like shushing him and being like, "Don't move, don't move." And I was like, I can see you guys. And she was like, "Oh shit." And he was just like, well, we're observing her, you might as well just like dive into it. And they were like talking without their mouths moving. And even
Really?
she had said at some point, like, she should not be able to understand us. How can she understand us? And he was like, I don't, isn't that what we're here to find out, you know? And he was very cute, very innocent, so wholesome, sweetest energy, little being, a little bean. I loved him. He was probably like, I don't know, maybe 4 feet tall, maybe. And he had like little boots, so there was like a little bit of platform. So it was a small little guy, and I'm only like 5'2", so he wasn't much smaller than me, but he made me feel like a giant. And they had these little like what looked like clipboards and writing utensils, and they were just observing. They were taking notes, and they had been following me for a long time. I believe that they had followed me from my ex in Vegas and like into back to when I went back to Colorado. And you know, they're talking to me and they were explaining that like it's, yes, I am a science project. It was like having a guinea pig. And they were like, you know, we're learning that you have had interactions where they've tested you to see how you interact with younglings. You know, are you going to react violently? Are you easily to control? You know, can you be trained to react violently, or are you a peacekeeper? And so the scientists were like, we really hope you stay on the peace side so that we can like interact with you and work together.
Mm-hmm.
But like the military is paying attention, and they are more than willing to take you in, break you in half, and build you all over again, which made me really uncomfortable because
No doubt. Yeah.
I have actively avoided anything military related in my life, and it's actually made my family really weird toward me for some reason. But the more they push it, the more like aggressive I get with being against it, because I'm just like, I know you guys don't believe in this stuff, but I know that if I was in the military, they would use me for very nefarious purposes. And I know that there is a piece of me that can be tapped into. I don't know how long it's been there, if it's always been a part of me, but there is a piece of me that could be the most dangerous thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that freaks me out. So I'm avidly fighting to not have that be accessed. And it's one of the reasons people are always teasing me about being a big old softy despite talking all big and like threatening to get
Right.
scrappy. And it's like, no, I don't know what will happen if I get scrappy or let that part out, because I've seen like in dream state like memories of them trying to tap into it, and like I'm well aware of that part of my psyche as a human being. Like we all have like a crazy person inside of us, and like if you get pushed enough, you know, if you're in abusive situations or you're mistreated a lot,
It will
you
come
much
out.
like an, yeah, it's you know, if you mistreat an animal, they're going to get aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's the same thing. Like, yes, we are animals, so we're going to react very similarly. And so when they were telling me that, I was trying to process the fact that not only were these things speaking to me and telling me that I've been spied on for forever, and my like weird fear of being watched all the time was just heightened.
I can imagine.
And because I used to, when I was a kid, I used to think there were eyes in the walls. I would always feel like things were watching me like in the walls, and I would feel like the walls could hear me. And then when I learned that, yeah, for some people, the FBI and other government agencies and stuff will put like microphones and cameras in your wall, like micro
Mm-hmm.
tiny
Mm-hmm.
stuffs, you know. And so like you don't know if you're being watched. And I actually when I worked with Amazing Jonathan, when I knew him, I found out after he and I stopped being friends, that he had hidden cameras in his house and stuff too. And it was weird because I remember feeling watched And because I've always had this knack for knowing someone's looking at me from a certain angle,
Mm-hmm.
I would find things that looked suspicious and I would just cover them with blankets or pillows or stuffed animals, or I'd unplug stuff. And people would come in later and be like, why is your room look like this? Or why, if you're, staying at someone's house, like, why are your clothes covering every surface? And
Right.
it's like, I don't know how to tell you this without sounding crazy. I'm being watched. And they'd be like, yeah, that sounds crazy. And so
That's
having these,
fascinating.
yeah,
I'm just thinking, like, as you. So, what do you think happened? Like, was it the mushrooms that turned something on in your mind? Do you think something happened on their end? Because I'm
I
thinking what I would have if I all of a sudden saw what you saw. Wow. Like like I mean, there like something broke down where this wasn't supposed to happen.
it was not. And they kept saying like, this isn't cool. Like we're gonna get in so much trouble. And I hear that a lot with these experiences. Is the things I end up interacting with are like, this isn't supposed to happen. This is not cool. We're toast. Like,
Right.
and that happens in my day to day too. Just weird stuff happens, and people are like, "Oh no, 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 it's not. No, this is not good." And I'm always like, "Did I do that?" Like, oops. I think in this particular case, I think they did something as I was taking mushrooms, and I
Right.
think it was just like a combination experience because I think it would happen even if I hadn't been on mushrooms.
Oh, right.
I
Right.
think the mushroom tea just helped me not freak out because I was so relaxed and I knew in my brain because my heart was beating and I could feel the anxiety pumping through my body and the
Right.
adrenaline. But then my brain was like, "Nah, dude, we cool. It's fine, girl. Just chill." And I was like, I don't know what's happening, but I want to cry for mom. And it was like, "No, you're a big girl. Put your big girl pants on." It's like, "You're 23. Like, get your shit together." Yeah. Mm. And they were just kind of like, "You, no,
Right.
shh," they were like, "Don't look." And it was scarier still too because like as the house was like coming back into view, at one point I saw like a soldier walk by and they were in all black, and everything about them was really intimidating. They did not look at me. I did not exist to them. They were just patrolling or whatever. But the fact that I saw this person that was about my size, a little bit more slender, it was very threatening, and it was armed, and it was just in this black bodysuit, this black armor that also looked like a space suit or something a submarine
Mm-hmm.
person, someone diving would wear. And they just walked through my wall where the staircase was. And so like we had a basement, and where they came out of, I was like, that's an 8 foot drop on the stairs. You don't just come from the stairs through the wall, and then they walked down the hallway. And then when they turned back around, they were walking toward me, and then they just disappeared 10 feet away from me. And I remember crying. It was something about that particular presence scared the absolute piss out of me.
Right.
And
Right.
I haven't had an experience like that until that was 2016. And then I experienced that in 2020, actually, when a friend of mine showed up at my house kind of randomly. She was like traveling across the country, and she stopped to stay the night and stuff. And we were talking, and she started talking about star seeds and aliens and things that had been happening to her. And she said that, "You're the only person I think I can talk to about this because you're an absolute Looney Tune, but I need someone to talk to." And so we were talking about it, and all of a sudden I was like, that thing I was telling you about, they're looking, they can see us, like we need to go inside. And then we did, and like the whole energy of the apartment changed. Like I locked all the doors. We could hear people walking around outside my apartment, but there was nothing. You could look through the viewfinder, there was nobody anywhere nearby. It was cold, so it's not like people were just gonna be chilling outside. There was
Mm-hmm.
like snow and stuff. And it was just like, it was really weird. And there's a certain energy with the soldiers that when they walk by, like it just makes me cry. It just scares me so much for some reason. And anything else, I can get like anxious or unsettled, but seeing the soldiers absolutely has me on my knees, like in the fetal position.
Right.
I don't know why. I don't think they're even doing anything intentionally. I think they're simply just existing and doing their thing. And I happen to tap into their energy as they're like crossing paths. But it is not a fun time. Not at
So
all.
the soldiers, they're human or are they alien?
I can only assume that they'd be alien, but they could be humans. I
I'm
don't
just wondering
know.
if they're
They're
working
just
together, kind of thing. Is what I'm
Oh, there's
wondering.
definitely some kind of crossover with humans and ETs for sure. I just because they had like big helmets and stuff, like full mask, like everything was blacked out. There were no discernible features. I couldn't even tell you if they had fingers. I just noticed everything else. They were mostly humanoid, the ones that I had seen, and they were very slender, like unnaturally skinny, but like very clearly had some kind of physical athleticism because like you wouldn't be a soldier otherwise, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like in some part of me it's like they can't, there's no way they can be human. Humans don't make me feel like that. But also I don't know if they also have abilities or something, or if it's just because they're using some kind of like invisibility or something like it. I would
Yeah.
assume that they're not human.
Especially from your
But
reaction. That's a key point.
yeah, it just, yeah, absolutely would drop me. I just, it, and when it was in the apartment in 2020, it had us so spooked that at one point, like, I was trying to be cool and tell it to like show itself, and I kept demanding that it do that, and she was like freaking out, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to see it, and I think she had said she had like a brain injury, and so there were issues with her processing information because there's like a whole part of her vision and like her brain that just would be like black, like you just wouldn't see anything. And
Hmm.
so then she would hallucinate because your brain's trying to make up information for what's
Right.
not there. And so she was like, I can't tell what's real sometimes because I if it's just me and no one else experiences this, I've just got to be in my head. And this time was like I'm describing to her what she's seeing without her saying anything. So she was like, this is happening. And at the one point the thing was sitting in my computer chair staring at me, and I was trying to buck up and like, oh yeah, show yourself, like what's
Hmm.
good, bro. And then it started to manifest and I panicked and was like, no, 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 no. No, I can't, it's too much, I cannot handle it. Just kidding, I was joking. If you come in peace, just leave, that'd be cool. Here's the door. Like
Right.
it.
That's fascinating. I'm just so you feel that they've been watching you for a long time. This is something
My probably my whole life, and also both my parents.
really.
um
So you
yeah.
think this goes family?
Yes, I know it does because more than once it's been brought to my attention via other information and other cross conversations I wasn't supposed to be paying attention to in abduction experiences. But I've also heard weird stuff in my house that no one else heard, like in physical interactions where people would say things. And then this headphone thing is gonna. But there's my dad's had a lot of ET experiences, but he doesn't like talking about them because they unsettle him. My mom's had a lot of UFO stuff that she's told me about fairly recently, where the more I talk about it, the more she feels comfortable to start digging into it, but it still freaks them both out a lot. And they get very scared to access that information, so they just kind of stuff it back down. I try to get that information out of them so that like even if they never want to talk about it again, I can at least get it from them to
Right.
share.
Right.
Because sometimes it happens around me too, and I'm like, you don't remember this and this, and then from their perspective a completely different thing happened. And then it's like, well, I don't disbelieve you, but like it didn't happen to me, so like how do you know you weren't just dreaming? And it's like, man,
It's different than a
you
dream,
still
I'm sure.
experience this and you're
Yeah.
still questioning whether I'm sane or not. Like
So it's definitely you think that there's something like going on that's been going on probably okay, this is probably a better way to put it. Have they ever talked to you, told you what they're doing, why they're doing this, why you like I would have so many questions if I was experiencing these things.
I I feel like I've had interactions where I was able to get that information, but I can't remember it. It's like it's so frustrating because it's much like my experiences with God, where he's just like, yeah, here's some information for you, but you're not going to remember it when you're conscious. And it's
Right.
like, what is the point? Like, why are
Exactly.
you sharing this information with me if I'm not allowed to like regularly access it? And uh, I don't know exactly what it was with my mom, but my dad's side of the family's had a lot of like really high up military access, and like my mom's side kind of has too, but my mom's side is a lot more, the women have been more affected. I don't
Right.
know any of the men that were affected. And my dad's side, I don't know who's been affected entirely. I know my grandmother experienced some stuff and she had some friends that were I suppose you could call them witches. They messed around with like dark forces for
Mhm.
sure. And my grandma is someone who experienced, fairies and gnome magic, and she's very much of a hippie, and so she would do a lot of like natural stuff, and a lot of the people that she talked to were very spiritual and esoteric in like a lighter sense. But there were people that got into some dark spooky stuff, and I don't know anything about my dad's side of the family. My grandpa, according to my grandmother, abandoned the family, but I have some suspicions that he was kind of pushed out for more than one reason. And we're Irish, so I can't help but feel like there's something to do with our Celtic bloodline, because even on my mom's side, we're, I think, more Scottish than Irish, but both sides have access to healing powers, precognition, levels of telepathy. Like my dad just knows things sometimes. Like his intuition is on point. Like he's almost never wrong, especially when it comes to weird stuff with me. If I have like a cool experience, or when I was doing stuff in magic and like I knew a lot of like celebrities and like rich weirdos, my dad would call out stuff and be like, I think this is gonna happen and I need you to be on your toes. And then
Right.
stuff would happen and my dad's like, I told you so. And I'd be like, how did you, the way that this happened, there's no way you could have assumed by any of the things that I did that that was going to be the result. Like, where did that come from? And he'd be like, I don't know. It's just, call it a dad's intuition. And I was like, yeah,
That's it's a
I think
little
it's
more
more
than
than
that.
dad's intimate. Yeah. It's just like, listen, man. And like my mom will do it too sometimes. Like I said earlier, she gets what she just says is woman's intuition, and then she just taps in and finds information. She figures things out. And sometimes it's uncomfortably on point. And sometimes my mom doesn't even understand that she's like pulling information out from literally nowhere. And she's convinced that I've somehow given way to whatever that is. Like she'll
Mm-hmm.
think I'm lying sometimes. And I'm sitting here like, I'm not lying, but I'm not about to rat myself out. How do you know that?
Yeah.
Like, what were you? Are you spying on me? And she'd be like, no, I just had a feeling. And I'm like, what? And so my whole childhood, my parents would do stuff like that. And now as an adult, as somebody who can do that to other people, I'm like, oh, okay, this is an ability my parents have that they don't fully understand. They don't know how to use it. They just access it occasionally. And I'm over here like trying to hone in and be able to use it regularly. And it's just kind of funny. So with my dad's side, with all the military stuff, and some of the relatives, like everyone in the family is in the military. It's really weird. And some of them are pretty high up, like they can't talk about their jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
my dad has a lot of close friends that are pretty high up in the military. They can't talk about their jobs. And they're either very interested in what I'm doing all the time, or they have no interest in me whatsoever in my peripherals. And so
Right.
I can't tell if they're like quietly spying, if I literally don't mean anything to them and I just happen to be like a weirdo that they don't want to talk about. But I have other friends that are in the military that are like, man, you better be careful because like I believe you, but like if anyone else hears you, they're either going to commit you to the loony bin or they're going to put you in a van and you're going to disappear. Like I need you to be very wary about what you're saying. And so I remember talking with Solaris years ago about it, and I believe that what I had figured out years ago, and it's been a long time since I talked about it, so I don't remember all of it right. I have notebooks full of this stuff that I've
I
jotted
can
down.
imagine. Yeah, I'd be
It's all
writing
in
it down.
storage right now, but there were things I figured out about like my ability to heal and like the telepathy,
Mm-hmm.
and I have this way of, I wish there was a better word, but like manipulating situations. So if there's something going on, I can kind of control people by just speaking to them, like making eye contact. I sort of take over a level of their energy sometimes, and I can sort of make things happen, usually to calm down a situation. If there's like a fight or any kind of like domestic issue, I have a really good way of keeping things sort of like at a boundary. And when I would get abducted and tested, they would test me on like my agility, my ability to react quickly. They would use me as, I wouldn't say an informant necessarily, but somebody who would just go gather information. And I'm really good at that. I'm really good at gathering information and I'm really good at finding things.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was a kid, I was used to find other ETs. Like, I think the only time I've seen what everyone else would describe as a gray, like a small gray,
Right.
they had used me. They picked me up from my room and they came from the door under the stairs in my childhood bedroom, which was really uncomfortable. Like the whole area was really spooky as a kid. But I remember the door opening one night and they came out and I went with them through the stairs and I was suddenly just on this big, what felt like a plate. it was just like a plate with stuff everywhere. It felt very holographic.
Okay.
Like it wasn't really there, which was weird. So it was kind of like you're walking into an empty room and they're like projecting something around you, but at the same time, like you're definitely not in like a physical space. And I remember them using me to hone in on somebody they were looking for. I remember having this. I figured it out when I was doing like a regressive therapy session with Misha, and she actually is the one that got most of the information. So somewhere I have the recorded experience where I was talking about it. So
Right.
that would have all the details. But I vaguely remember they were, bless you, they were trying to find one of their family members, one of their relatives. And I discovered that it was in a base in Colorado and he was not alive anymore and that they were running tests on it. Him, her, it, they, I don't know. And I remember the beings were trying to explain something to me, and I remember them showing me like a big window, like looking at the planet, and there was like four sections, almost like four different TVs, and they were all different endings to the world. And I was like 7 or 8 when that
Wow.
experience
Yeah.
happened, and I remember it freaking me out for years. Like one of them was like a huge like earthly calamity, like volcanoes erupting and just kind of like everything exploding in the world sort of collapsing on
Mm-hmm.
itself. One was like nuclear war. One was I don't know if it was a meteor or like a solar flame hit, and then another one was just the earth just like freezing over. And they were like, if you guys don't get it together and give us our people back, these kinds of things are going to happen. And then I remember waking up just screaming in terror, and my mom came in. She thought I just had a bad dream. And I remember just being super freaked out and her trying to like comfort me because she was like, it just sounds like a bad dream. I don't know what's happening. And
But why give us our people back? I just, what is, you
I
don't, you have no
I don't
idea.
know any more on that one. My
Wow.
my assumption is that there's some kind of interaction. Like in the regressive therapy, it sounded like it had some connection to Roswell, personally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it sounded like, you know, if ETs are coming to work with people, they're being taken and held against their wills or against some kind of contract. And so it sounded like when I was a kid, it made me think that they were looking for their children or something, like their kids had been taken. And that really messed with me too. And so even on a regular, like a normal life level, you know, not thinking about aliens and stuff, my whole life I was very sensitive to kids disappearing
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, well, someone's going to come looking for them. And sometimes you see kids that don't have regular family and there's just like a weird connection. And like I know I've met hybrid children and like what are they called? Oh gosh, I can't think of the word.
I know. I'm
I want to
trying to
say like
think.
rainbow kids or crystal children.
I know that. I know what you're trying to think of too, and I can't
Yeah, I was
remember
like whatever that special
term is.
term is. Yeah, for
Yeah,
like the star seeds that have the kids that are like super fancy.
that's gonna drive me crazy now. Trying to remember that. I will. I
Man,
will. It'll come to me.
yeah, I was like usually I can usually it comes right up, but whatever that term was, like I would recognize those kids all the time as a young person. And some of them are still friends of mine. A lot of them have just kind of like vanished, disappeared, moved on, whatever. We've disconnected, whatever the thing is, you know. But indigo children, that's what they're called.
Indigo. There you go.
Indigo children. I knew a lot of indigo children as a kid, and I see them even today. Those kids will see me. They will hone in from nowhere. I'll be minding my business at the grocery store or the gas station or fast food, and I'll see a small child, and some of them have just these big eyes, and there's just something about them just doesn't look normal,
Right.
but not in like an unsettling way. It's almost like uncanny valley where like you're like that's definitely a human, but there's features about them that are like too sharp, too pointy, too perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, especially for like some of the parents. And I'm like, look, I know genetics are powerful, but there is no way that you made that child. Like that's not how genetics works, you know? And so it's funny because those kids, they look at me and they'll smile and they'll just it's like we're having a whole conversation. And a lot of the times the parents are like, oh my god, he never does that, or oh my god, she doesn't usually look at strangers, or you know, kids that seem super shy hiding behind mom and dad's legs, they'll always come up and try to talk to me. A lot of them try to hug me. Some of them say, you know, hi, how are you, as if we know each other. It's super weird.
It
I mean,
is.
it's super sweet and it's very flattering. I love it. I think kids are amazing. And I love knowing that kids see me as someone safe even if they have no idea why.
Right.
And so I, even with ETs and stuff, I've seen, I don't know if tall whites is even the right word for them either, but I've seen tall white children that in Vegas especially were in situations where you could tell they were uncomfortable, and I would just sort of like walk in and, I don't know, in a way put like wings around them to kind of guide them away from stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took my role as like a protector very seriously. And because my brother and I had like a rough childhood, like his dad was crazy abusive. And so I was always protecting my little brother, but I'm convinced he may also be an indigo child, and he just hasn't tapped into that as much. He has some experiences, but he astutes a lot of his stuff to his faith more than anything.
Right.
Although he has experienced some weird ET stuff with me where even he's like, I don't know what that was, but I hope it never happens again.
Wow.
Especially when we were like little kids. Like he
Right.
would have nightmares and stuff. He was seeing my imaginary friends when I was a teenager, and it would freak him out because he was like, "Nah, I didn't invite that. That thing came to me." And, it was like, for me, I was like, "Oh, it's an imaginary friend. Everything, it's fine." I just thought maybe kids had the same imagination or something, and I didn't
Yeah.
realize that that was like entities. Like those are like most children's invisible friends are just that. They're invisible beings. And so people will call them imaginary friends, but a lot of times like those are things with like real access to real energy, and they talk to your kids, and hi Mo, and
That's a
they interact with you, and it's a little unsettling to think about that too, because it's like I got a lot of weird stories from my childhood where it's like, oh yeah, it's my invisible friend Bob or whatever, and people are like, no, I saw that. There's nothing invisible about that. What are you talking about? Like,
That's
oh,
fascinating. I think there's so like there's such a huge topic, and I mean I could keep talking. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I am hoping you'll come back.
I would love to.
Because I would,
I really
yeah.
appreciate you letting me
Well,
talk
I
about some
want
of
to.
this
I
stuff.
got
It's really
so many
cool.
more questions and stuff, and there's so many ways. Like it's such a big topic because I think about what we're talking about. I think about how people feel demonic presences and they feel presences around them. I think and ghost as we kind of touched on. There's so many
Mm-hmm.
different ways, and now you're seeing this. People are really starting to see UFOs more. They're like kind of like, even the government's coming out with it now, which is for years and years you were crazy. They were looking into
Yep.
it, and now it's every day. They're like, oh no, now they exist. I just
Now they exist. Now we can talk about aliens, guys. We put the pressure on. Everyone else has been talking
exactly,
about it. Did you know
exactly.
the United States is the only country on the planet that did not disclose UFOs to their citizens? We're the only country that doesn't believe in UFOs, like as a country,
Why does that not surprise me in a way?
right? I'm
I
not
mean,
surprised. I am disappointed, but I'm not
disappoint's a good
surprised.
word. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because I mean, there's definitely people are seeing stuff. That's what I've always said. I've said the same thing about the Bigfoot topic too, and
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, even if I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt, even if 99.5 of what the Bigfoot thing is or alien things are hoaxes, and that point 0.5 is real, that still is enough proof that there's something going
Right.
on.
That's still proof that something's happening, and a lot of people are experiencing it
Yeah,
in some way or another.
exactly. And I mean, have you seen UFOs like in
Oh
flying?
yeah. I've
Really?
I've seen a lot. I was telling Bill, every time it happens, I act like it's the first time it's ever happened, and I get just as excited, and I freak out every time.
That's
Every time
fascinating.
someone else points it out, I'm like, "Oh my god, you'll never guess!" Like it's every single time. And I had a friend who would get mad because she's like, "Dude, this happens to you all the time. Like, why are you acting like it's the first time it's ever happened?" And I'm like, it's just exciting. I don't know, like it's just
It would
more
be
people
exciting.
seeing it. It's exciting because it's like now you know. So now you're privy to the same information as in my head. It's like now more people know, we can all talk about it, and we can all like bond, and it
No,
doesn't
that's a
usually go
good
that way.
point. It's a good point. Yeah, but you're something different is going on with you than just seeing a UFO. You're really tapped into something that is
Yeah.
higher. Like I mean, and
I I have a lot of questions that are not being answered about that, because sometimes it'll be really active for months, and then I'll go years without anything significant happening. And that's kind of how it's been the last couple of years. I went to Texas and almost nothing happened. I was abducted a few times because I wake up, like I said, with my brain feeling like it's in a microwave, and I can just tell by the way that I wake up that I was dropped off, and they just like dipped, and it's like, oh, thanks. Don't even offer me a coffee on the way out. You're rude,
something for the
you know?
hangover. Give me
Yeah.
something. But
but
yeah,
but I don't know what the real purpose to a lot of it is because I don't remember a lot of it. I know something's happening, so
Yeah, you're don't. Yeah, there's definitely and there. You know they're watching because that
all the
happens
time. It's
all
so
the time.
uncomfortable.
So it makes you
Like
wonder, like maybe are they watching you because you have a gift, and they're trying to see how you're going to use your gift? That's what are they the ones
I
that gave
feel
you the
like
gift?
that's see, that's the thing too. I have a friend who was like, "Well, if you meet the aliens, like tell them to give me superpowers. Like let me be Goku or whatever." And I'm like, "I don't think the aliens are just going to give us superpowers." And he's like, "But if they do." And I'm
I
like, "All
got my
right."
name. Fair enough. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it
like,
doesn't
"All
hurt to
right, I'll let
ask.
them know." Like if someone's looking, like I've got someone who's, volunteers. But I don't know, cuz sometimes it feels like they're watching because I have some kind of ability they're interested in. And like I said, I've been tested where they want to see how I react to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And because most of the time I don't react violently, things happen more frequently. But when I do react violently, uh, it's usually out of like a frustration or a confusion, or like a severe agitation. Like if I'm already confused and things keep happening and then I just get like aggravated, weird stuff happens. I've only gotten violent with an ET once or twice in an experience I had, and once it was with a youngling, and I felt so bad. I was so haunted by traumatizing this creature that was just like, I'm so sorry, dude. Like you spooked me. Like you can't just come out swinging and like taking the form of people that I know are not the people that you're trying to be. Like you can't just surprise me like that. I do not react well to surprises. Like if I'm
Right.
not in the right mindset, peekaboo could end up with you losing teeth. You could get stabbed. You could get hit with a broom. I might cry. I don't know. Like I just, I don't do well with surprises, and because surprises hit me in various times, especially when it's an ET, it just usually I laugh and I'm like, okay, listen, man, like I'm not ready. Like you gotta give me some time to prepare. And when it's a supernatural spooky ookie, I'm usually just like, man, I don't have time for you. Like please go away. Like I am
Right.
I am not in
There's
the mood anymore.
yeah. Next time I have you on, I definitely want to talk more about that too because I'm really fascinated too with hauntings and what's going on with people people see things, they're connecting with
Hmm.
things, and I'm so curious about that aspect too, like what you're finding out or what you're experiencing. And I have so many questions, I mean, about
That's awesome.
like
I
I'm just
I love
like
that.
yeah, because it's such a vast topic. That's the thing, like it's not like
Oh, definitely.
the whole UFO alien thing. I remember I got into the cattle mutilation thing. I was down that rabbit hole for the longest time
Oh
too, and
my
I've
god.
talked to people that have actually really dove into it, and they're like, "There's something going on," and it seems like everybody's trying to put the pieces together to get the picture.
Yeah.
Like nobody really knows exactly what's going on.
I think there's so many things going on that they all just kind of cross each other's paths.
Right?
And
Yeah.
we, as people, are experiencing it. We just assume it's all the same thing. But I could not even tell you anything about those cattle mutilations. I'm still confused. I've gone down that rabbit hole a few times. I've spent days digging into that. I don't understand. I've asked about it. Some of them have no idea what I'm talking about. They're like, "Why would we do that? That's barbaric." And I'm like, I don't know. Some
There's
of you dissected me, and it's just it's like if you're just gonna take my organs out and like play around on the inside of my body, why wouldn't you do it to a cow? Like, are they related instances? Like,
you've
and
had
some
that
of them.
happen. Do you remember that they've worked
Oh
like
yeah, it's happened a few times. It's the one I remember was that first experience.
right?
Like they pulled a baby out of me.
Oh my god.
I laugh at it now because like if I don't I might cry because that was haunting. But I remember them. Yeah, they pulled a baby out of me and then they were just like, yeah, this is ours anyway. Like mind your business. And I'm like, excuse me, that came out of my body. Like my organs are on the table next to me. And they're like, yeah, you're not even supposed to be awake. Like this should not be happening. She should not be awake. We have to do something. Like this is, when it first was coming to in that experience, being
Mm-hmm.
like zooted through space, and I woke up on the medical table with like a big light around me. It was blinding. I could see people and their whole faces were covered. It was very sterile. That's when I remember I was telling Bill like I had that epidural, and I'm like, how do I even know what that is? Like, how do I know that's what's happening? But I just knew that's what was happening, and it was so surreal having two conscious experiences of being not in my body and feeling all these weird things happening to me that were very medically. It was so creepy because I remember my legs feeling like they turned to rubber, And I remember feeling like the bottom half of me was being flopped around and just like cut open, and I could like feel things happening. And then the top half of me was like screaming and freaking out in my bedroom trying to like get my boyfriend to wake up. And then the next thing I know, I'm on a ship. They pulled this baby out of me. They were freaking out. They said something about um the lady I could hear, she said, they've gone too far this time. They need to stop. Like, they're going to die if we don't do something. And then I kept trying to sit up, which was freaking them out because they were like, you should be
Out.
completely knocked out.
Right.
There's no reason for you to be moving. How are you moving? Like, what is happening? And I remember at one point after they took the baby away, I kept being like, hey, that's mine. Give that came out of that is one of my organs. Give it back. And they were like,
Mm-hmm.
no, this is ours. This is our baby. And I'm like, no. And I remember just trying to like walk away, like holding myself in. Like, I don't know if I had like guts falling out or something, but I remember grabbing like my insides and sort of like feeling like I was holding myself together. Like, I internally thought to like find a stapler and just go, like in Prometheus, where she just
Right.
like staples herself and keeps going. Like, that was a thought I had before that movie came out. So when it came out, I was like, I've done that. That I don't like that.
Wow.
Like, why is she doing, why things like that happen in movies and I get uncomfortable because I'm like, that's happened to me. Like that, remember that story I was telling you? And my mom, she'll see stuff and be like, is that what you were, is that the visual representation of when you're describing this and that thing happening? Or, oh, that sounds like something you've experienced. I was like, is this a visual representation
Mm-hmm.
of, this and that? And I'm like, yes, it's uncanny actually. And there's things that happen in TV and media. And I'm like, that's me. That's when I'm telling you this is happening, this is what I mean. And people are like, whoa,
So
like
it's
that's
like they're kind of
crazy.
showing what's going on through movies and television and
Yeah. I literally feel like media is telling pieces of my life story, and it's really unsettling because I don't know how many other people experience those things, but some of that stuff's like real specific. And when people turn and they go, hey, isn't that how you described? And it's like, yeah, yep, that's like
wow.
a literal, like pulled out of my memory, like out of my brain experience. And it's like, if it's happening to me, it has to be happening to someone else. Like, I cannot possibly be the only person experiencing this. Like, I refuse to believe that after all the things I've been through and all the things people have said, oh, me too, I thought I was the only one. There's no way I can be the only one that kind of stuff is happening to. There have to be other people. Maybe there's not a lot of us, but there has to be other people watching these TV shows and
Right.
movies and being like unsettled because it's like, hey man, I'm in therapy because of that scene that happened to me, and
Yeah.
I
It's
refuse to
really.
believe we're the only things alive on this planet that don't exist elsewhere, and I refuse to believe I'm the only person that this stuff is happening to. Like, there has to be more people out there, and if you're there, like, please talk to me. Please share that with me. Like,
That's what's
let.
amazing though about talking to you is you're so open to it. That
Oh
that's.
yeah,
I mean, like what you're describing, like with taking the baby out of you, and that's so traumatizing. But you're still open
I
to the
believe.
experience.
Like I said, after I met God and my brain melted and like nothing spooks me anymore, I just get like gently uncomfortable, but I laugh at everything. So I apologize for people who think I'm like joking or not taking things seriously. I I laugh and I have this weird smile that I do in every situation. And if I don't, negative energy just takes over. So I let's see, even right now, I laugh at really traumatizing events in my life because I have to cope with some kind of humor, or else I will just be a ball in the corner.
Yeah, I know lots
Um,
of people that I do that in a lot of the curbs. I'll kind of laugh at something, and they're like, "That's not funny. It's just a coping mechanism."
yeah, it's like, well, I mean, in my experience, it kind of is funny if it was, if it was in a movie. That's my thing too. Is like really messed up stuff will happen, and I'll start just laughing, and people are like, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Okay, but if this was an Adam Sandler movie and that happened, like this would be really
It'd be
funny."
funny.
It's
Yeah.
not because it's really happening, but if you look at my life like a movie, and God just has a really fucked up sense of humor, I'm just
It's funny.
saying it's pretty funny. like,
It's so
like
true. Wow.
you
I
know.
can't believe that we've talked for almost 2 hours. Wow.
Oh
So
god, I can do that for days. It's really wild. I can literally just keep going forever. My mom's
I'm
gonna
definitely
lose her
gonna have
mind.
you come back, Zoe. I want you to come back maybe in a month or so, and we'll
I
continue
would
this. We'll
love
do a
to.
part two,
Heck
because
yeah.
I'll have a slew of questions for you again. Uh,
Yeah.
I just think this is really cool. But I want to give you the last
Thank
couple
you.
minutes to let everybody know where they can find your artwork, because I know you do a lot of artwork, and promote yourself. So the floor is yours.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Thank you. I'm on pretty much all social media. Just about everything is going to be Miss B the cat.
Okay.
I do have on my Twitter and my Instagram, I believe I have, it might not be. On at least my Twitter, I have a link, like a pinned tweet, that has different links you can go to find me on different stuff. If you go to direct.me/Miss B, MISSBII, that'll take you to my direct me page, which has all kinds of links to like Patreon, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook,
Oh,
Instagram, all
perfect.
that stuff. So that's the one I should probably send people to the most. That way you can decide where you want to follow. But it's also got like my Venmo page and stuff like that. I did just start a Venmo business. I finally don't have the card yet, but I started that one. So if you want to buy any of my merch and stuff, you can get it through my Venmo while my website is being reconstructed. And then my Patreon is patreon.com/Miss B. And what was the other one? Oh, my Ko-fi is Miss B the Cat. So that's ko-fi.com/Miss B the Cat.
Oh, perfect. And
Um,
I'll make sure I leave
so
links for you too in the description so people can actually, I'll make it
thanks.
easy for them to come and find your artwork and stuff. And definitely check her out, guys. I mean, and I will have you back, I promise, to do a part two because
Awesome.
I'm really fascinated. And there's, like I was saying, there's so many areas we can cover because it's such a broad topic. I mean, you got like the paranormal things going on with ghosts and demons, and then you have the UFO side of it, you have the clairvoyant side of it. You have like there's so many areas to go.
I've
So
got so many stories. So I would love to talk more about that, especially ghosts and stuff. Man, I was talking to Caroline a couple weeks ago on her show about that too. And it was like, whew.
well, give me one ghost story. Give me a good one that you.
My favorite one
Yes.
is there was a tornado in northern Colorado a few years back. And I mean, it's kind of tragic, honestly. Like, I'm not saying I love it because of the tragedy. It's my favorite thing to kind of bring up to people that's not scary necessarily. But there was a tornado and it tore up most of northern Colorado. And in Windsor, there was a house that was the exact mirror of my house in Loveland, and the family was basically a mirror of mine, except where we had two. It was me and my stepsister and my little brother. In that house it was a little sister and two older brothers, and their house was completely obliterated, and their teenage son, who was around the same age as me, who looked like uncomfortably like if I was a boy in another world, it would have been this kid. It was really weird. There was all
Wow.
kinds of things about him that were like the same as me, and it was super odd. But he happened to be home during the tornado, and nobody knows why he was home, but he ended up disappearing, and we assumed dead based on like, news reports and stuff. He was just never found. And that same, like, the afternoon after all this stuff had kind of calmed down, like the day after the storm, my brother was coming home, and he walked into the house, and like when you first walked in our front door, there was like a big like living room space that wrapped down to the kitchen, and then there was like, to your left there was like a hallway. To your left you could go to the garage, you go down the hall a little bit, and there was the bathroom, and then you go down and there was like the kitchen/dining area, and then to the left of that was like our living room, and then through the kitchen was the back door. But coming through the front door, you could go straight up the stairs to 3 bedrooms and a bathroom that were upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother was walking through the front door, looked up at the top of the stairs, and saw a boy that looked about the same age and sort of look as a couple of my friends in high school. And I remember my brother had called out, and the kid said, "Get out of my house," and then started shouting at my brother. And my brother didn't recognize him. He didn't recognize the voice or anything. But all of a sudden, the doors upstairs closed behind him as he was watching this boy. And so my brother freaked out, ran to the neighbors, and said, "There's a strange guy in our house. He told me to get
Right.
out. Like, I don't know what's going on." And my brother was like 10 at the time, so he was still pretty little. And I was coming home from high school with my friends. And by the time I got there, I don't think I had a cell phone at the time, but the cops were all there. Everybody was like standing outside. And I remember everyone asking me questions, and Harley said, "Hey, your friends Trav and Fuzz are upstairs." And I was like, "No, I literally just saw them at the bus stop. Like, they went home.
Right.
Like, they went to so and so's house." And they were like, "No, he's upstairs." And I was like, "That's weird." So I went in up thinking there was some friend of mine from school playing a prank. And I was like, "Why are you just coming into my house without knocking or like letting anyone know that you're coming over, you weirdo? Like, that's not the kind of friendship we have." And I remember walking in and feeling uncomfortable. Like, there was someone in my house, but I didn't recognize the energy. I remember going upstairs to my room, And sure enough, there was a boy sitting on my bed, and he happened to look up, and I was like, "Who the hell are you?" And he was like, "Get out of my room." And then he jumped up in front of me, and that's when I realized he was not even a physical being. And then the door closed on me, and I was pushed backwards. And I remember running down the stairs all freaked out and saying, like, there's something in the house. And the cops went up and looked, and there was nothing. They checked the whole house. They assumed somebody snuck in and then left. And everybody kind of made fun of me because they're like, "Oh, you're probably just crazy. Like, you're just seeing
Right.
stuff. You and your ghost movies." And it was like, okay, but if my brother is the one that pointed it out, and then I had that experience, like, this isn't just something we made up. Like, my brother is terrified to sleep in his room right now. My parents think that I just have some weirdo friend helping himself to our house, and I'm telling you that was not a real person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could see through him, and at some point, like over the course of a few weeks, I got used to his presence and was able to finally talk to him and found out his name was Danny. And he would just hang out in his house before it was torn apart by the tornado. He had like a little hideout in his closet it was like his sanctuary. He would just
Right.
go in his closet and everybody would just leave him alone. And so I kept having dreams of him coming out of my closet, which also scared me because ET would always come out of my closet. So at some point when he and I established a friendship, I was like, you can't you can't be in the closet
No more
anymore, man. Like it's
closet.
it's creepy. And so he would just hang out in the house and he would just wander around and he would move stuff. And the cat really liked him because our cat would respond to him all the time. And he would occasionally, if I left lights on, they would just get turned off. And I would intentionally leave them on at night. And my mom would say, hey, thanks for turning the lights out. Like, we've talked about it a few times. Like, thank you for being better at that. And I'm over here like, I didn't do it. I
And your
intentionally turned it
cat,
on.
wow, and your cat noticed. Your cat.
Yeah, my cat Remo, he was definitely a familiar. There was something very mystical about that cat. And he was the only animal in the house at the time that wasn't weirded out by Danny's presence. And so anytime Remo would talk to him and would meow out loud, because Remo didn't meow a lot. He was not a talkative cat, not like Bagheera, who would talk to everybody who would listen. Remo was a very stoic cat, and um, he was very powerful, very prideful cat. He was very, very strong, and there was just something very mystical about him. And I would know where Danny was in the house because Remo would just sit places and kind of look up and look like he was having like a full conversation. He
Mm-hmm.
would nod and he would react, and he would kind of sit there and look like he was thinking about stuff. And I'd be like, "What are you guys doing?" Like, "Danny, come say hi." Like, and I had some
Wow.
friends that had seen Danny too, and they would describe to me how he looked, and he had like a typical emo kid look. He would wear it was a permanent look for him, but it was, he had this black band t-shirt with this like black and white long sleeve underneath that had like the holes in the thumb, and it was all like ratty and tatty, and he had skinny jeans and the big belts and stuff. And he had like electric blue hair. It was really cool. And that's one of the reasons I like having blue hair is I always think of Danny whenever I do it. And so I think about him all the time too, because once I moved, like his energy didn't stay with me, which was kind of unfortunate. I was kind of hoping he'd be like my forever ghost friend, but
Yeah, I was just gonna
I
ask,
don't
did he
know.
come? Did he follow, or was he locked to that location?
I was trying to teach him to like leave the house. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that. I found out later that that's actually probably like a terrifying thing for people, especially like some of my indigenous friends were like, you don't teach the spirits to get stronger. Like, what's wrong with you? But
Yeah,
I was trying to I was trying to
trying
teach
to
Danny to
help.
go outside.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I was like, oh, he's just agoraphobic. Like he could leave. Like this isn't even his house. And so I was always encouraging him to like leave. And I was always trying to get him to like move stuff in the house. And I was like, well, maybe you can just like physically manifest and be a person again. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I apparently that's a very big no-no in the magic world. Like we don't encourage them to do those things. Um, I don't know why. I personally think it'd be cool if you could just like will yourself back into
can
existence.
you
But I'm also
imagine?
stubborn and I refuse to die anyways. So if I can find a
Fascinating.
way to like make myself be more physical, I
You would do it.
absolutely would do that.
You would absolutely do it. Yeah, so would I actually, to be
Yeah.
honest. I mean,
Like
so
why not? Like if I can do all these other things, why not try this? Like if you're a ghost and you're stuck in like a permanent plasma state, like would you not try to just be stronger? I don't know. I
I
don't know,
would.
because you hear all those haunting stories of things like trying to be more physical, and I'm like, maybe they're not trying to scare you. Maybe they're just mad that they're dead and they've got stuff to do. I
That
don't
could
know.
be it. I mean, why? Hey, this is that. That's a great thought, actually. I mean, now that I think about it.
Like, if
Wow.
I'm stubborn, you think someone else isn't more stubborn? Like, come on. Come on.
Wow. Well, thank you so much,
But
Zoe. I can't thank you
yeah.
enough. I mean, this was
No, thank
amazing,
you.
and I will definitely have you back in a month. I promise. We're gonna
I
do a
love
part
that.
two, and we're
That's
gonna
exciting.
dive into
I'm
Ghost.
honored.
Oh, I am too to have you here.
Absolutely.
We will dive into Ghost, and we will probably cover a lot of other things. But
Cool.
thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm so glad you reached out. I'm glad that you were on Bill's show. Like,
Bill's
this is
awesome.
a cool experience for me. Like I said, Solaris opened doors and things are just happening. Like Meki contacted me
It's
from
that power of manifestation that you talked about at the beginning.
yeah.
That's what
And
it is.
I do it sometimes without realizing that's what I've done and thinking I need to do it like a really specific way, and it's like, no, you just put it out there and let it come back to you. I'm very
Absolutely.
impatient though, so when things I'm intentionally trying to manifest don't happen, I get so bummed.
Wow.
So, but
Well, I'm looking forward to part two already. I really am.
yeah, me too.
So yeah, I will definitely.
Momo says hello.
Oh my god. Oh, he's a
She's
talker too.
Yes, she is.
Oh, she.
She's
Okay, she's a she.
yes, this is a she. Yeah. She picks up after Bagheera. So if you hear chirping and stuff in the back, it's probably this one.
Oh, that's what Bill was saying at the beginning. He's like, "Oh, something always interrupts before you do an interview,"
Yep.
and I was like, "What is he talking about?" The cats.
It's usually the cats. Yep. It's either Gigi or Momo, but it's usually Momo. So
That's so
and I've
cute.
got three of them, so sometimes it could be any of them, but typically Mo is the one that comes up and starts
He
chewing
wants
on me or
the
trying to talk.
he wants the attention. That's what it is.
Yep.
They love to be
Yeah.
the center. I know my cats want to be the center of attention anytime I'm around.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
if
They're
I
like,
don't
excuse
shut,
me.
yeah, and if I don't shut the podcast room door, they'll come in and then they're on the camera, they're stepping on the
Yeah,
keyboard, they're looking at, they always, and if I'm not doing a live podcast, they won't go near the camera. It's really weird. It's
that's
only
so
when I'm
funny.
live, they'll be like, gotta go look.
They know. They're
They
like, you
know.
gotta pay attention to me.
Yep, it's like, gotta know
That's
who
so
I
funny.
am. It's so cute though, but I will let you go. Thank you so much, Zoe.
Alrighty.
I will definitely
Thank
make sure.
you.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I will have you back in a month. We're gonna do part two. My word.
Awesome. That sounds
Alrighty.
amazing. I'm honored. Can't wait.
I know, and I will
So
definitely keep in touch, and I'll probably have lots of questions for you. So
perfect.
I will definitely be in touch with you.
Awesome. Sounds great, Rick. Have a good rest of your night, man.
You too, and I'll keep in touch. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye. There we have it. I can tell you what an incredible interview. What an incredible lady to talk to. Fascinating to me. Some of the stuff that she covered. Terrifying, to be honest. And this is, as I was saying at the very beginning, a topic that I have been super interested in from like at the time I can remember the time that story that I just told during that interview that my mom experienced. I remember her telling me that, and wow, it was fascinating, and then it got me looking into it. So I've watched so many documentaries on aliens and alien abductions, the cat mutilations, you name the topic of that in that genre, and I've looked into it and really studied it. So I was so, and then I was, like I said, during Bill's show at Revolution Radio, he had Zoe on a few days ago on his Dreamer show. And I had to get her on, guys. I had to talk to her. This is fascinating stuff to me that the whole paranormal aspect of things really is fascinating to me. And I think that, it was great that we were kind of talking about that at the beginning, that you have to connect with yourself and do the work on yourself. I think I've always said that's so important. And I think people, if they did that, they would start opening themselves up to more of these things. I think people just get so disconnected from who they are, from their true selves, they close that ability off. And then, with all the nasty food that we're eating that they call food, and the medications and the poisoning our water, our air, now what they're putting in us, we're shutting that third eye off. We're losing that. It's just becoming so calcified that we're losing that connection. And for me, it really started to change, like as I always said, when I went back into nature and I really started doing the work on myself and just grounding and doing that work, even just taking a little time every day to get to know yourself, rediscover who you truly are. Doesn't have to be hours and hours a day. That's not what I've ever said. But even if you just take a few minutes every day to sit quiet with yourself, no distractions, and get to know yourself and be honest with yourself, things start happening. The power of manifestation, absolutely believe in that. Seen it happen in my own life. And I'm glad that Zoe really talked about that. So, what an amazing topic that we covered. So many things, so many, very interesting, but to me, kind of nerve wracking. Some of the things that she was talking about would scare me, definitely. So, hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm definitely will promise I will have her back in a month. We're going to do part two because I'm going to have a ton of questions. I want to get into more of the ghost aspect, the demon aspect, and kind of hauntings and that whole genre is what I really like to get into and talk to Zoe about when we get her back. I'm sure we'll branch off into the alien stuff too. Who knows where it'll go? It'll just be a great conversation. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys have yourselves a great day, great night, wherever you guys are. And don't forget, I always want to leave off the evening by go ahead and let you guys know about what is coming up, guys. Live June 24th and 25th. We are talking Funnel 3, guys. That's Funnel 3, the Trivium. Knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. And I'm telling you, it is a free online event. It's for critical thinking and manifesting freedom, guys. You can go and register at Freedom Slips. Sorry, God, I got that on hand. You can go ahead and register at freedomundernaturalllaw.com. Go over there, guys. You want to make sure you set this time on your calendar. June 24th and 25th, 2-day event. And the coolest part about this event is at the end of the day, there's going to be a round table with all the presenters. So you can go write down your questions for all the presenters as you're watching during the day. And you will have the opportunity, guys, to go into the chat room, ask these presenters any questions that you have. It's an interaction with them. So cool. Very, not doesn't happen too often that happens where you can go and ask the presenter questions, especially when you do them online. So make sure you guys put this on your calendar, as I said, June 24th, 25th, and it will be a live event. Looking forward to that, guys. I'm really excited. There's so many incredible presenters that are going to be doing this. I will keep you posted too as we get the list of names and the presenters who are going to be there. I will let you guys know, keep you guys posted, and I'll keep reminding you guys that you guys have to be there. Very cool. Going to be a lot of knowledge in those 2 days that you're going to want to check out, guys. It's going to be a great event. So that is the Trivium. Knowledge, understanding, wisdom. And just to wrap up here, we are also talking now. This is my new, just my little thumbnail I made to advertise my channels. So we got very cool. Just remember, you can find me at Revolution Radio, revolution.radio. So go and type that in, and then you can find my Monday show. It's every 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio A. I'm also there at Studio B for the Crypt, Rick, and Jonathan show. That will be Saturday evenings, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Studio B, Crypt, Rick, and Jonathan show. I'm all over. I'm getting a lot more coverage now, so I am definitely at the One Great Work Network. Check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. You can find me here, obviously, on YouTube, revolution.radio, and now I am also on Rumble, so please go over there, check out some interviews there that I've posted recently that I can't post on this platform. So you want to go to my Rumble to find a lot of the interviews that I can't post here. And there is a few of them. So go and check it out, guys. A lot of great stuff over there that's going to be happening at Rumble for me. And it's easy to find me on Rumble. It's just Crypt Ricks, I've been thinking, all one word. So Crypt Ricks, I've been thinking, all one word on Rumble. Please head over there, sub to me because I don't have very many subs. I just started putting all my content over there and these interviews that you can't find on this platform. So check it out, guys. I'm going to be probably going to Odyssey, adding that very soon. Trying to get this information out there, get the knowledge out there. So your support is so important. I appreciate each and every one of you guys that come here, support me, check out my interviews, leave amazing comments, interactions. I love that. And don't forget, you can also get a hold of me through email if there's somebody that you would like me to interview. If you would like to come on for an interview, you would like me to interview you, talk about whatever it is you want to talk about, I am totally open to that. Just reach out to me at email. Just go to binthinkingpodcast@gmail.com. binthinkingpodcast@gmail.com. Put in the title description what it is, you'd like to talk about or who you'd like me to have on the show, and we'll see if we can make it happen, guys. So thank you so much. Let me just go ahead here and bring myself back. So thank you guys so much. So many great things coming up here on this channel, and I'm really looking forward to it. I got some great interviews lined up. I'm so excited to be doing these interviews again. Don't forget, though, a lot going on at revolution.radio too. I'm doing some incredible interviews over there for my Monday show and for the one I do with my co-host Jonathan Wright. Check it out, guys, and I'm looking forward to a great year. I really am, guys, and I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much. You guys are incredible. And remember, nobody's better at being yourself, well, being you, I should say, than be you. Nobody's better at being you than you. Take care, guys. Stay safe. Take care of each other. And I'll be back very soon with another great interview.
Are you interested in the paranormal? Murder mysteries, cryptocurrency, and thought-provoking interviews? Then check out Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking on YouTube, or every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Studio A at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Welcome to the Crypt.